Draco woke as sunlight filtered through the room. Or rather, he finally allowed himself to rest when the first rays of dawn broke the horizon. On his chest, Kuroka lay curled up, her breathing soft and steady, exhaustion evident after their intense night together. Draco, nya, she murmured sleepily, her voice a mix of fatigue and contentment. That was incredible, nya. He couldn't help but chuckle softly, shaking his head. For someone so tired, Kuroka still managed to muster enough energy to talk. You should try to get some more sleep, Draco said gently. But why does it feel like you're about to ruin my nap? She teased, yawning halfway through her sentence. Draco laughed, running a hand gently through her dark hair. Because I am. Don't you remember? Today's the day Chiron and Mordred arrive. We have to pick them up. Kuroka's golden eyes shot open as her ears twitched. All right, Chiron, my cute little Amudo is finally coming to Japan. Her face lit up with excitement, her previous sleepiness vanishing in an instant. Draco couldn't help but smile. You really care about Chiron, huh? Of course. She's my little sister. My only blood relative, Kuroka said, her voice softening. Then her expression turned mischievous. And she's irresistibly cute, don't you think? There was a playful sparkle in her eyes, but Draco caught the subtle undertone of her question. She is, he admitted without hesitation. The air grew tense immediately as Kuroka's playful expression morphed into one of mock suspicion. Yeah, I knew it. You've got your eyes on my little Chiron, she exclaimed, dramatically lunging at him as if to strangle him. Draco didn't even flinch. Kuroka, you know your strength isn't enough to harm me. She pouted but quickly stuck out her tongue in defeat. Tsh, you're no fun. I'm kidding, Draco said with a grin, pulling her into a gentle hug. Let's get ready. There's still time before we need to leave, but we'll need a shower first. We smell pretty unique right now. Kuroka wrinkled her nose, her expression quickly changing to one of defiance. No way. I want the world to know I'm your wife now. I'm not washing the scent off for a year. Draco raised an eyebrow. Kuroka, I know you're just trying to avoid showering. Her ears drooped slightly, and she sighed in defeat. Fine, but you're lucky I love you, she muttered, reluctantly following him to the bathroom. ####, a bond forged. As warm water cascaded down over them, Draco washed away the remnants of their shared intimacy while Kuroka leaned against him, her tail swaying lazily behind her. Kuroka, Draco began after a moment of silence. Remember what I told you last night? About getting stronger? Kuroka's ears twitched, and her body stiffened slightly before she nodded. Yes, I can give you that strength, Draco said, his voice steady. But there's a price. If I grant you this power, your fate will be tied to mine. If I die, you die too. We'll face enemies far beyond anything you've imagined, gods and beings even more powerful than them. The path ahead will be dangerous. Are you ready to accept that? Kuroka didn't hesitate. Her golden eyes met his, unwavering and filled with love. Draco, I already told you last night, she said, her voice firm. If you die, I'll follow you. My life has no meaning without you. I love you more than anything in this world. Even more than Chiron. I would fight gods, dragons, or anything else for you. So yes, tie my fate to yours. I'll follow you to the end of time. Moved by her words, Draco pulled her into a deep embrace. Then become my servant. A system prompt appeared before him. ###, awakening power. Sage, I confirm that Kuroka's class is caster. Roger that. An intense light enveloped Kuroka's body, forcing Draco to step back. Her silhouette began to shift and grow. When the light finally faded, Kuroka stood taller, her features more refined and mature. She now resembled the confident, powerful woman Draco had envisioned when he first met her. What just happened? Kuroka asked, examining her hands and tail with fascination. I feel incredible. You've become my servant, Draco explained. Your strength has increased significantly. A system window appeared before him, displaying Kuroka's new stats. Hashtag a gift of strength. Draco wasn't done. He wanted Kuroka to be fully prepared for the challenges ahead. Sage, I want to grant Kuroka a noble phantasm. Using one fate point. Noble phantasm obtained. Sudarshan Chakra Yamaraj, A+. A surge of power coursed through Kuroka, and instinctively, she summoned a glowing red chakram. It hovered in her hand, radiating immense energy. This feels amazing, Kuroko exclaimed, spinning the chakram with ease. That's your noble phantasm, Draco said with a smile. It's a weapon capable of incredible destruction. Use it wisely. Kuroka grinned mischievously. Of course, my dear husband, but don't blame me if I accidentally destroy something important. Draco chuckled. I wouldn't expect anything less from you. Hashtag a shared future. As the morning sun climbed higher, Draco and Kuroka prepared to welcome Chiron and Mordred. Kuroka, now stronger than ever, couldn't contain her excitement at reuniting with her sister. Draco watched her with a mixture of pride and affection. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. For now, though, they had a moment of peace, and for that he was grateful. After a bit of fun and another shower, Draco and Kuroka were finally ready to leave for the airport. We're going to be late, yeah, Kuroka exclaimed, pacing anxiously. The flight was due to arrive in 10 minutes, and the airport was 50 kilometers away, a daunting distance with traffic. Relax, Draco said with a smirk. I've got a special ride for this occasion. Before Kuroka could question him, a brilliant golden light appeared, and Golden Drive, Draco's noble phantasm, materialized. A gleaming golden motorbike, large enough for 2 or 3 people, stood majestically on the road. Kuroka's jaw dropped. What is this? Your ride, Draco said nonchalantly, climbing onto the bike. Hop on. Still dazed, Kuroka slid onto the seat behind him. Hold on tight, Draco instructed. Kuroka wrapped her arms around Draco's waist, hugging him tightly. As soon as Draco accelerated, the bike surged forward with incredible speed, the wind whipping past them. Even though Draco only used 20% of its top speed of 2,500 kilometers per hour, the sheer velocity was enough to leave Kuroka clinging to him for dear life. This is insane, she cried, but there was a hint of excitement in her voice. With the help of stealth, Draco ensured they avoided any unwanted attention, and before long, they arrived at the airport with 5 minutes to spare. Hashtag a reunion of sisters. Draco dismissed Golden Drive, and the two made their way to the arrival gates. They waited a few minutes before spotting 3 figures emerging from the terminal. Chironya, Kuroka shouted, her voice full of excitement. Kuroka-nisama. The 2 sisters dashed toward each other, colliding in an embrace that sent them tumbling to the ground. They laughed, uncaring of the scene they were causing. Draco sighed, covering his face with one hand. Could they be any more dramatic? Ignoring the sisters, Mordred strode toward Draco with her usual confident gait. She stopped in front of him and looked him up and down. Master, she muttered under her breath. Draco tilted his head. What? Mordred stared for a moment longer, then smirked. Without warning, she punched him in the shoulder. Good to see you, Master. Though the punch was meant to be friendly, Mordred's immense strength forced Draco to take a step back. Yeah, it's good to see you too, Draco said, chuckling as he rubbed his shoulder. Before he could say more, Mordred's expression softened as she studied him. Acting on instinct, Draco reached out and patted her head. Soft. Mordred froze, her face turning crimson. Master. Realizing what he'd done, Draco quickly withdrew his hand. Sorry, you're just so, cute I couldn't help it. Cute? Mordred's voice trembled, and she looked away, her cheeks glowing red. What is this feeling? Why is my heart beating so fast? Draco, oblivious to her inner turmoil, turned his attention to the 3rd figure, standing quietly behind Mordred. Hashtag Valerie Teeps. Mordred, eager to shift focus, grabbed the girl by the shoulders and pushed her forward. Master, this is Valerie Teeps. She's the one with the Longinus I told you about. Oh, and she's a beauty too. Nice to meet you, Valerie, Draco said, extending his hand. Valerie, a pale, delicate-looking girl with striking red eyes and golden hair, took a step back instead of shaking his hand. Her expression was a mix of fear and caution. Draco didn't take offense. Instead, he smiled gently. It's okay to be scared. I can see you've been through a lot. You're safe now, Valerie. Why don't you come with us? There's plenty of space at my place, and you're welcome to stay as long as you want. Mordred added, you don't have to be so cautious. Master may look intimidating, but he's a good guy. What's that supposed to mean, Mordred? Draco asked, raising an eyebrow. Nothing, Mordred said quickly, sticking out her tongue before rushing off to separate Kuroka and Chiron. Hashtag, a sister's bond. Kuroka and Chiron were still sprawled on the floor, laughing and chatting. Yurine-sama is so happy, Chiron, Kuroka said, stroking her sister's hair affectionately. I can tell, Chiron replied with a soft smile. Then her nose wrinkled, and she tilted her head. But why do you smell like Draco and I? Kuroka froze for a moment before flashing a sly grin. Yurine-sama is a grown woman now, Chiron. Let's just say things between us have evolved. Chiron's cheeks turned pink, and she quickly looked away. I see. Despite her embarrassment, Chiron couldn't help but smile. Kuroka's happiness was infectious, and knowing her sister was content brought her joy. Hashtag, Mordred's surprise. Mordred eventually reached the sisters and yanked them to their feet. Stop making fools of yourselves and act like adults. As she stood next to Kuroka, Mordred's eyes widened in shock. Wait a second. You. What is it, Mordred-sensei? Chiron asked, confused. You're not a heroic spirit, Mordred said, pointing at Kuroka. How are you a servant? My husband is a miracle worker, Kuroka said with a smug smile. He can do anything? Mordred clicked her tongue. What kind are you? Caster. Mordred frowned, her confidence wavering. Was she not enough for Draco? Did he need more servants because she had failed him in some way? Memories of her early mistakes, the near-fatal fight when she was first summoned, flashed through her mind. But then she remembered Draco's words earlier. Asterisk, you're cute. Asterisk, if Draco was replacing her, would he have said something like that? Probably not. Maybe she'd misunderstood his intentions. Taking a deep breath, Mordred pushed her insecurities aside and focused on the task at hand. For now, she would support Draco, Kuroka, and Valerie in whatever way she could. Moving forward, as the group left the airport together, Draco couldn't help but feel a sense of contentment. Though their team had grown more complicated, it was also stronger. With Mordred's unwavering loyalty, Kuroka's newfound strength, and Valerie's potential, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.
Hey everyone, Quantum Audiobook here. Sorry for interrupting, but if you're enjoying this content, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your thoughts on this novel in the comments, and don't forget to like the video.
In the apartment building, shortly after Kuroka and Draco went to the airport, a door opened, and a young girl came out of her room. Moo, they've been fucking like rabbits all night. They haven't let me sleep at all. Natsum had messy hair and deep dark circles under her eyes. Good morning, Natsum. A beautiful blonde girl, Lavinia, came out of the same room. Unlike Natsum, it seemed that Lavinia had slept well. Yo, Lavinia, what did you think you were doing last night? You almost walked into Draco's room again. Last night, Natsum left the room to go to the bathroom, and halfway through, she met a sleepwalking Lavinia. It was fortunate that Natsum met her, as Lavinia had been about to enter Draco's room while he and Kuroka were having sex. It's not like it's the first time I've slept there. Lavinia had an honest face of confusion, as if she didn't really understand what Natsum was saying. Sleeping in someone else's room? Isn't that what she did unconsciously every night? Though it was almost always Natsum-chan's room, and a few times in Draco-kun's. Didn't realize what happened in Draco-kun's room last night. What? Did something happen to Draco-kun? Lavinia confused Natsum, thinking that something bad had happened to Draco and Kuroka. It's not that. Wait, Natsum ran after Lavinia, who was already beginning to invoke her Longinus. The witch opened the door to the room by the door, and was assaulted by the smell left by all the activity that Kuroka and Draco had been carrying out the previous night. What is this? Dear Kuro-chan. Lavinia called about the two people who lived here, but received no answer. This worried her even more. Lavinia! Natsum finally caught up with the witch, and stopped her from doing anything crazy. What's going on? What happened here? Draco and Kuroka have already left. Today was the day Kuroka's little sister returned. Don't you remember? They should be arriving at the airport now. That's right. Natsum was speechless when she saw her friend Lavinia. Was her head really empty? But what is this unique smells? Lavinia asked. Natsum entered the room with Lavinia. These are the results of the battle that took place in this room yesterday. At least they were decent enough to clean the room before they left. Battle? Did Dra-kun and Kuro-chan fight someone yesterday? Natsum looked Lavinia in the eye. Was Lavinia making fun of Natsum? Or was Lavinia as innocent as she looked? Honestly, for Natsum, a 17-year-old girl couldn't be as innocent as Lavinia appeared. Sex. Kuroka and Draco had sex last night, all night long and non-stop. Really? I couldn't sleep at all because of the two of them. And that damn lazy cat, she was screaming her head off. I'm sure she was doing it on purpose. I'm so sleepy. While Natsum was complaining, Lavinia was blushing. She went from less to more, starting with her cheeks and ending with her ears. Had Natsum said sex? Wasn't that the activity adults did to make babies? But that couldn't be possible. Kuroka and Draco were still very young, or at least Kuroka was, so they should not be looking for babies right now. Besides, her teacher had taught her that only married couples performed this act. Had Kuroka and Draco married yet? No. That couldn't be true. Because if that was true, wouldn't that mean Lavinia wouldn't have a chance with Draco anymore? Is something wrong, Lavinia? Natsum asked. Natsum, are Kuroka and Draco married? I don't think so. They're still too young to get married, aren't they? So I guess they're, a couple, but they can't have sex if they're not married, right? Huh? Where did you get that? Well, in some religions, the ideal is to arrive at marriage as a virgin, both man and woman. Still, even human religious don't listen anymore. What do you expect from a dragon and a yokai? Natsum did not know much about the supernatural world, but this was something that could be considered common sense. Religious practices, such as arriving at marriage as a virgin, were almost unheard of today. Although Lavinia was not sure if Natsum's words were true, she felt a sense of relief inside. It seems that Kuroka has taken a step forward in her relationship with Big Brother. It's about time. That idiot Big Bro has been keeping her waiting for a long time. The sudden arrival of Valina surprised both Lavinia and Natsum. Valina, don't give us those scares. Good morning, VHon. Lavinia's reaction was calmer than Natsum's, although that was expected given the different personalities of each. Good morning. You don't seem to have slept well, Natsum. Valina gave Natsum a mischievous smile. She seemed to have guessed correctly why Natsum had not been able to sleep. I've had some problems, although I'm sure the great Valina has too. There's no way you couldn't have heard last night's screams with the perfect senses you have. To answer Natsum, who was looking defiantly at Valina, the young Lucifer does a pose that she thought was cool. You underestimate me, Natsum Managawa. Valina Lucifer is always ready for any challenge. Knowing Kuroka, I knew she would make as much noise as possible so that we would realize what they were doing. Since I knew this day would come sooner or later, I have special headphones ready, so I didn't hear anything. Valina responds with an arrogant smile to Natsum. As expected from the descendant of Lucifer and the bearer of one of the 13 Longinus, she was prepared for any situation. Damn it, I want to sleep. Artemis was looking at the rainbow-colored heavenly bridge that was rising to the sky. This was the Amino Yukai Hashi, the heavenly bridge that connects the Takamagara, the heavenly court of the Japanese gods, to the earth. Today was the day that Artemis had agreed to meet with Amaterasu to discuss the whole matter of the connection she felt 6 months ago. I am Artemis, goddess of the hunt and virginity. I have come, as agreed, to meet with Amaterasu. Artemis announced her arrival. "Come up." An ethereal voice came from the high heavens, the Takamagura, giving Artemis permission to tread the celestial lands. Artemis did not delay and climbed to the top. When she reached the top, a servant was waiting for her. "Amaterasu Omikami is waiting for you. I will be the one to guide the esteemed guest. I will be in your care." Artemis followed the servant to where Amaterasu was waiting for her. She said a respectful goodbye to the servant and entered the place. The interior looked like a typical Japanese traditional room, and a young woman was waiting while she drank what appeared to be tea. This woman had the appearance of a woman in her 20s, but she had not passed 25. Her features were those of a Japanese woman, which did not mean that she was not beautiful. Her beauty, though different from that of Artemis, rivaled that of the goddess of the hunt. She wore a simple white dress with few details. Her hair was black, and her eyes emitted a golden glow. She was the main goddess of Japan, Amaterasu. "It has been a few decades since our last meeting, Artemis." "That's right." Artemis sat across from Amaterasu. The two goddesses were only separated by a traditional Japanese wooden table. Artemis had changed her appearance. She no longer looked like a 12-year-old girl, but a woman of about 17 to 18 years of age. This was the appearance that Artemis had when she attended official meetings. Amaterasu handed Artemis a glass of tea similar to the one she was drinking, and Artemis took it with pleasure. They only enjoyed the tea in silence as they looked into each other's eyes. Artemis and Amaterasu, the goddess of the moon and the goddess of the sun, were very good friends. Both were single at this time, though Artemis was the only virgin. The truth is that it was very difficult to find a virgin goddess these days, with Artemis being one of the few of them. Amaterasu had been married once. Her ex-husband was her brother Tsukuyami, but she had been divorced after an incident in which he killed a goddess friend of Amaterasu. Since then, the sun separated from the moon in Japanese territory. Since then, thousands and thousands of years had passed, and Amaterasu had not met another man. During that time, she met Artemis, and she was amazed at her determination to remain a virgin during her lifetime. Eventually, they became very close friends, if not best friends. "Well, to what do we owe your presence here? You told me you had something important to investigate on my turf. What is so important that it requires the personal presence of an Olympic goddess?" Amaterasu went straight to the main issue. Artemis smiled. Amaterasu had always been this serious when it came to official business. 6 months ago, my brother and I felt that someone was making a connection with us. It was only for an instant, a few seconds, but we felt it. We want to investigate who has made a connection with our divine spirits, and I want to know how they did it. I came here because Japan was the place where we felt that connection. Amaterasu frowned. 6 months ago, in Japan, hadn't the news Suzuta mentioned to her that an incident had occurred during that time? You could have sent your jackets to investigate. Why didn't you? They're busy hunting, plus, you seem to have something on your mind. Amaterasu knew Artemis well, so nothing could escape her eyes when it came to her best friend. That connection reminded me of Atalanta. Artemis sighed. Atalanta was one of the most talented hunters ever to be devoted to Artemis. The goddess saved her when she was a baby abandoned in the mountains, but she never expected her to become one of the greatest hunters ever recorded. In terms of her talent with archery, she was only on par with Orion, but he surpassed her in terms of physical qualities. Artemis intended to recruit Atalanta into her huntress retinue, but she married before the goddess could extend her invitation. Once married and having lost her purity, Atalanta could no longer join Artemis' retinue of hunters. Artemis lamented that event, but lamented, even more, the cruel fate of Atalanta. The huntress, who was living a happy married life, committed the sin of having sexual relations in a sanctuary of Cybele. As a punishment, they were transformed into lions. By the time Artemis learned what had happened, it was too late to reverse it. But now, Artemis had felt a connection that reminded her of Atalanta. Was she the reincarnation of Atalanta? If so, Artemis was willing to bring her into his care. I see. I have good news for you, as I may have some information about what happened 6 months ago. At a specific place, the main sanctuary of the Himejima clan, family members gathered in the outer sanctuary. With equally severe expressions, all members present at that time were aware of the truth behind the events that had occurred. The base of the untimely agency was more or less under control. Although several fugitives had escaped, the remains of one of the masterminds, those of Himejima Hanazu, had been recovered. Because of that, by now at least everything had been solved. In the complete and utter silence, a somber-faced old man squatting before the inner sanctum whispered, "It would be good if our ties to Grigori's fate were severed." With that phrase, the outer sanctum erupted with noise. All the members of the clan began to speak their minds simultaneously. Suzerain, right? We've seen that one case. The negotiations about Aquino and Shuri have already reached a conclusion, but the old man, the suzerain of the Himejima family, let out a single sigh as if he wasn't interested. That was resolved through a secret agreement we made with Azazel. From now on, Grigori will not be able to act freely throughout Japan, and they are forbidden to enter areas where the 5 clans govern unless they have permission from us. The problem we have now is that dragon, since we underestimated its strength. We have information that that dragon is residing in Japan. If a monster like that creates any more conflict in this country, it's our duty as the Himejima clan to exterminate it. These were not at all hesitant words. A strong, unwavering will permeated the minds and bodies of all present. The members of the clan successively expressed their opinions about the information. We must take this opportunity to bridge the gap with the other families. Their side also has unexpected users of supernatural powers. And after all, the sacred gear holders were taken by the Grigori. Shinra's side too. I've heard they have a daughter who possessed a sacred treasure mirror that had the power to contact demons. It is clear that it is not at all a coincidence that such calamities have occurred at the same time in the 5 main families. The Association of Wizards, Grauzober, have they asked us to form a cooperative relationship in this matter? Hearing these few words, the gentleman took out only one paper. It was a document written in magic characters. It seemed to be a call for cooperation from the Magicians' Association, known as Grauzober. Remaining inexpressive, the Lord formed a phenomenon of fire in his hand, and in an instant he turned the paper on which the call had been written into ashes. There is no need to collude with foreign practitioners. We must show a separation between Mephistopheles, who leads Grauzober, and us. The same for that Azazel, since he's nothing but a swindler. In fact, that was all that needed to be said. For the people of the clan, it was unanimous after all. As far as that band of Black Wings is concerned, the Vatican could also move. It's okay if it's mutual non-intervention. If there is a conflict, it's enough if we censure them at that time. The Lord gave a strict answer. As for the clan members, their mouths continued to speak. However, there is the matter of Oz, the picture book world. Grigori, Oz, and those who rebelled against the 5 major clans continue to appear one after another. The clan members who could not hide their discomfort were not insignificant. It was natural, although they were already aware of the group of fallen angels and the Association of Wizards, not to mention the betrayal of the Utsusimi Agency. It was truly unexpected that Oz should be involved in these events. Until now, among those who were part of the 5 major clans, none of them had believed that such a place existed. Even among those who had gathered here, some still had doubts about it. Even within this, the suzerain Himejima Su came to a clear decision. Whatever happens, if such a demon Resetsu sets foot in Japan bringing disaster, it is our assigned role to eradicate him completely. Everyone silently nodded their heads in agreement to this. But, letting out a sigh, Himejima Su said this. Truly, the dog, produced from the genealogy of my older sister, who was exiled from the family, the matter of the holy lightning was enough. What kind of strange thing has this family possessed? However, it cannot be helped that such a thing has occurred from the Himejima bloodline. Suzuko, at the suzerain's call, the form of a single individual appeared. Yes, it was a young woman with beautiful long black hair. Her black hair had a sheen, as if it were wet. She possessed a frigid atmosphere, one that was tidy without a hint of hesitation. As for the young woman's age, Himejima Suzuku was 17 years old as of this year. Her appearance was appropriate since she was one of the granddaughters of Himejima Sua's other elder sister. Until this year, she had been the only talented woman of all her relatives who had inherited the sacred beast, Suzu, that was ruled by Himejima. No, in recent years, the one who had inherited the sacred beast from each of the respective 5 major clans was remarkably young. Based on this, the efforts the families had undertaken to bring in good blood seemed to have borne fruit. Beyond that, however, there was something else that Su, who was the master, harbored toward this daughter. It was that she was very much like the first one he had raised, Shuri, who had since left them to go away with the fallen angels. Suzaku's mother had been Shuri's biological elder sister. The suzerain, Su had thought of that without meaning to. After closing her eyes, she spoke to Suzaku. I ask you for the herald who will become the next chief of the Himejima. Starting with Red, can you show us the dance of fire? Suzaku bowed deeply. I would be honored, Uji-sama. Hearing that line from Suzaku, Su nodded calmly. But Su, narrowing his eyes, looked down at the floor. However, towards the daughter of the lightning, who was being hidden by the fallen angels. To the dog of darkness who is aligned with the dragon. He, speaking in a whisper, for the time being, we should designate him as the fallen dog god. Having been honored by the suzerain order at the main shrine, Himejima Suzaku was walking the grounds. Yo! Raising a cry, there was a boy with glasses who looked about the same age as her. Possessing long, thin limbs, he was a handsome boy. The strange aura surrounding his body was equivalent to that of Suzaku, or perhaps even, what brings you here, Saryu-chan of the Kushihashi family? Suzaku asked as such. The boy, Kushihashi, Saryu shrugged, asking if it will become a 3-way fight with the band of fallen angels and the magicians from the picture book. Suzaku walked again as he spoke. Well, I guess it's pretty crowded around here. Not that you're not going to work hard too. As he followed her, Saryu responded, since that would be the family's decision too, although we'll have no choice but to comply as well. Apart from that, I had to fly here when I heard that Himejima had produced the dog god. Isn't it amazing that he's one of the Longinus? Suzaku stopped walking and spoke without turning around. Isn't it ironic that such a dark leaf should be born from the Himejima that governs Shinto? Sensing the atmosphere of Suzaku, Saryu put on a bitter smile. Frighteningly scary, Saryu changed the subject as she continued. Are you even aware of that, Suzaku? That the dog's mere presence would bring the 4 fiends together. The matter of the 4 fiends and the dog god. For the old Sama of Himejima, however, it has aroused more than his fury. The Himejima are interesting, Coming from here, there is a high frequency of irregularities. From the misconduct of the fallen angel, the dragon that destroys his plans, to the birth of the dog god. And only you are their salvation. No, even I was originally from the dark side. It's just that I could only be forgiven for those days. Saryu, though it is a sin, I would like you to prepare a meeting place for the other members of the 4 divine beasts and the Ariadano. At these words from Suzaku, Saryu smiled brightly. That is your movement, This should be fun. However, aside from Genba-chan and that troublemaker Byako, are you really going to go so far as to summon Uryu? That person is a lot harder to please than you might guess. Suzaku gathered all her long hair on her back, forming a ponytail. To make sure, I have to see this personally. Not only the 4 friends, accused Tobio. For me, eventually, even that Tobio boy, even that lightning business will be recognized as part of this family. I will accept even the darkness of the family. Well, I'm only interested in that dragon. Which will be stronger, me, who carries the spirit of the Azure Dragon, or a real dragon? Suzaku gave Saryu a glance from the side and let out a slight sigh. The next head of the Kushihashi family left after talking to Suzaku a bit, leaving her alone. Suzaku did not return immediately. She spent some time thinking. That dragon Saryu spoke of? Suzaku did not know what kind of person he was, but she was very grateful to that man/dragon. He had saved the lives of 2 of the most important people to Suzaku, so she felt she owed a debt of gratitude to the dragon. The failure to kill Shuri and Akino had been a severe blow to the Himejima clan, a blow that Suzaku could not afford to miss. Many events involving the 5 clans had come to Amaterasu's attention, and the patron goddess was greatly displeased with them. Amaterasu had already contacted Suzaku before she even took that name, and had given her the goddess blessing. Indeed, Suzaku had not only received the sacred beast that shared her name, but had the blessing of the head goddess of Japan as well. You could say that Suzaku was the chosen one. As such, the mission of Suzaku was to change the 5 clans from within. Because Amaterasu could not intervene due to the policies of the gods in her pantheon, Suzaku had to do all this work alone. To do so, the young woman needed the support of the other 4 descendants who had inherited the sacred beasts. Young beauty, with black hair and red eyes. You must be Suzaku Himejima. An ethereal voice surprised Suzaku. Her body went up in flames, ready for any surprise attack. The power that belongs to her sacred beast, Suzaku, enveloped her body. You do not have to be on alert. I am not an enemy. Amaterasu has told me that you can help me. A beautiful young woman appeared in front of Suzaku. Suzaku relaxed as she heard that the woman had been sent by Amaterasu. If her goddess said she had to help someone, Suzaku would gladly do so. Who are you? How can I help you? Suzaku asked as she dismissed the flames. My name is Artemis, goddess of the hunt, among other things. I need you to help me find a person. Like Natsum, Rainier couldn't sleep well that night. Although the reason was different from Natsum's. Rainier had had a nightmare. The truth is, Rainier had been seeing the same nightmare for 6 months. Specifically, she'd seen it since her uncle tried to kill her at Barakiel's house. The nightmares always the same, never changing. No, there was something that changed all the time. The scenes Rainier saw were always the same, but there was an outside element that always changed. That was the person who accompanied Rainier as she watched the nightmare. See you again, Rainier. Rainier heard that female voice again. Rainier wanted to respond. She wanted to ask why she had to watch this scene over and over again. She wanted to know why she had to suffer so much. I wonder if you'll fall into despair one more time. The voice sounded arrogant, and it seemed to enjoy how much Rainier was suffering. Come on, Rainier. We have to surprise your parents, remember? Let's show them how you can control the sacred fire. A different voice, more masculine than the previous one, reached Rainier's ears. This voice, no, these words were the same ones Rainier had heard for over 180 times in these 6 months. Rainier didn't want to turn her head, but her body acted on its own. She looked up, where she saw the figure of her paternal uncle. Yes, Dad will be happy if I show him how I've improved. Of course, I'm sure your father will enjoy it. Rainier remembered this moment. Her uncle had been training her secretly since she was little. Her parents only know that she was training, but what was she training was a secret for them. When her uncle told her about being able to show her parents her progress, Rainier was more than happy to do so. Now, Rainier knew that she and her uncle were going to break into their house. And knowing what was going to happen next, Rainier didn't want to go in. But it wasn't a decision that future Rainier could choose. She was just a soul tied to a puppet that was acting on her own. As much willpower as Rainier had, she could only watch the scene repeat itself. Little Rainier and future Rainier, I think that you can understand the difference. Rainier's uncle rang the doorbell, and it was Rainier's father who opened it to welcome them. He was a young man who didn't seem to be in his 20s, although his real age was unknown. This was common among supernatural beings. Little Ray, I didn't expect you here so soon. Good afternoon, big brother. Little Ray, that was the nickname Rainier's parents called her. Rainier was crying just to remember it, and inside, she was screaming at the Rainier of the past not to go into that house. No matter how much you scream, no matter how much you cry, no matter what, you can't change what's already happened. The evil voice once again reached Rainier's ears. She hated that voice so much. Only about 10 minutes later, although it had been hours for Rainier, and 4 people were gathered in a room. Rainier's parents and her uncle were watching a little Rainier. Come on, Rainier. Show your parents what you've learned. Rainier's uncle encouraged her. And Rainier did. A gentle white flame appeared over Rainier's hands. That is, the sacred flame of Father. Rainier's father soon connected the dots and came to the right conclusion. From that moment on, everything was happiness for the family. But as Rainier knew, This was not going to have a happy ending. Rainier, now you have to show your parents the last trick you've learned. Last trick? Little Rainier asked curiously. Don't you remember? Then let me remind you. The guy came up to little Rainier. Stay away. Stay away. The Rainier of the present screamed in her mind, but it was useless. She could only languish in despair as she watched events unfold once more. Rainier's uncle stood behind her and secretly pulled out a syringe that contained a suspicious liquid inside. He bent down, looking as if he was going to whisper something in Rainier's ear, and inserted the syringe into Rainier's neck. Little Rainier convulsed as all the fluid entered her veins. The present Rainier could feel the same pain as the little one, and she was unable to bear it even after so long. Brother, what have you done to Rainier? Rainier's father jumped forward, worried about his daughter. You want to know? Rainier's uncle blew his cover and no longer bothered to hide his true feelings. The look he was giving his little brother made it seem like he was looking at a bug. Little Rainier began to emit a scary aura, which caused her mother to faint instantly. Rainier's mother was just an ordinary human, so there was no way she could bear the aura little Rainier was emitting at that time. Bastard! Rainier's father pounced on his older brother, but a lance of light went through him before he could do anything. You are the son of an archangel, but your power is hardly comparable to that of a fallen angel with 2 pairs of wings. Not only are you trash, but you have even married a human insect and had a child with her. But even with all that, you're still my brother. That's why I'm going to tell you what I've injected into my dear niece. Rainier's uncle approached him and kicked him, causing him to fly and fall over his wife's body. Malbranche, or so Satinel had called it. I seem to remember that he had obtained it from a certain Zeroma Nibirius. I have heard that a portion of this power made a descendant of the original Beelzebub raise his power from an ultimate class to surpass the power of the gods. Even Surzex Lucifer had to use his true form to kill him. My question is, what is the power my dear niece can use with just a syringe? Aeoiwa! Little Rainier screamed in pain. Even present Rainier felt her veins burning. But this was a little torture compared to what would come next. The white flames that Rainier had only slightly manifested in her hands now covered her entire body. Not only that, but they were beginning to spread throughout the room. The flames spread to the furniture and started a fire. This was no danger to Rainier's father or uncle. However, Rainier's power rose to unexpected proportions. She did not know how to control her new power, so she was not making good use of it. But the same could not be said of Rainier's mother, who was no more than an ordinary human. Rainier's father knew this, so he struggled desperately to move. But the spear of light that had pierced him would not let him move. If this continued, they would both die. Rainier's uncle was only watching from the side, and he was genuinely surprised. Even if he believed Rainier could increase her powers by a high margin, he didn't expect it to be this far. Rainier's power at this point exceeded by a wide margin that of a 6-winged fallen angel like him, perhaps even reaching the power of an 8-winged fallen angel. If this continued, he might even be in danger. He knew that he no longer had a place in Grigori after what happened, but he didn't care. Satinel had told him of an initiative called Cow's Brigade, and he was interested in helping him carry it out. Though his power was not the most prominent, he was still a figure of importance as the firstborn son of one of the Seraphim. With that, Rainier's uncle left the house, leaving a berserker Rainier and both her parents on the verge of death. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. Little Rainier whispered something her older counterpart shared. Use my power so I can ease your pain. The evil voice sounded in Rainier's head. It was the same evil voice as before, but this time it was talking to little Rainier. No, shouted Rainier from the present. Really? Asked the Rainier from the past. Yes, but you have to keep in mind that all the pain you feel in your body will be concentrated in your right arm. Are you ready for that? It was obvious that the evil voice came from the past, unlike the previous one, and only listened to what little Rainier said. Yes. Good. Rainier's right arm glowed, and a black blade appeared in her hand. Now, I will absorb all the evil energy that is corrupting your body. It was an instant, but it was an instant that Rainier would never forget, even without having to live these nightmares. All the pain she felt in her body piled up in her right arm, and she had underestimated all that pain gathered in one spot. Aoiwa, you have to endure the pain. You only have to endure it for 30 seconds. But that was too much for little Rainier. How she could tell that the pain was coming from the black sword. She tried to throw it, but it was as if an extremely strong glue had stuck the sword to Rainier's palm, preventing her from releasing it. But that gesture had been Rainier's biggest mistake. Rainier's sword and movement had directed a flame right in front of Rainier, where unfortunately her parents were. Rainier's father saw it, and he grabbed his wife and pushed her out of range. The wife survived, but he wasn't so lucky. Her body, cut in two, fell to the ground lifeless. Finally, the 30 seconds passed, and Rainier lost consciousness. The sword disappeared without a trace, and since she was immune to her own flames, Rainier survived without a scratch. Sadly, a fire is a fire, and Rainier's mother died before the rescue arrived. The present Rainier looked up at the ceiling of her room. Sweat ran down her entire body, but a sense of relief ran through her body. The nightmare was finally over, so she could live the rest of the day in peace. You can't run from your past forever, Rainier. You are my host, so I will always be there to support you. You only have to call my name to borrow my power. The evil voice left one last message before it disappeared. Draco's group returned to the apartment building by train, as it was impossible for so many people to return on Draco's motorcycle without making several trips. So this is where Kurokane-sama and Draconi live. Chiron commented upon arriving at the apartment building. Yes, but we don't live alone. Interesting people live with us. The journey from the airport to the apartment building had gone smoothly. Mordred, Draco, Kuroka, and Chiron spent a happy moment sharing anecdotes about what had happened during these 6 months. Draco and Kuroka talked about Barrakiel and his family, as well as Rainier, Valina, and events related to Slashdog. On the other hand, Mordred and Chiron talked about the time they spent in England with the Pendragon family, where they met Arthur and Luffy Pendragon, and then they talked a bit about the week they had spent in Romania. Chiron and Mordred seemed to have spent some exciting time there in England, and had even had a little adventure involving vampires and werewolves on Romania. Upon entering the apartment building, it was a little silver-haired girl who came out to greet them. "You're back, big bro. How dare you keep Lucifer's descendant waiting?" It was obviously Valina who had gone out to meet them. She was going to greet them with her usual attitude, but fell silent when she saw the people accompanying Draco. Valina already knew that he was going to be accompanied by 2 or 3 more people, but what she didn't expect was the intensity that these people emitted. The blonde girl, who looked like a vampire, but for some reason did not have to protect herself from the sun, seemed nothing special. In fact, Valina could openly say that she was very weak, and no one could say otherwise. On the other hand, there was another girl who seemed to be her age with white hair and cat ears. If Valina wasn't mistaken, she should be Kuroka's younger sister. Unlike the blonde girl, Chiron, or so Draco had said her name was, seemed like a worthy opponent to face the young Lucifer. Of course, she would only be a worthy opponent if Valina did not use her sacred gear. Then there was the third woman, who was obviously the oldest of them all. She was strong. Damn! The aura she gave off was such that Valina thought she was seeing a monster. Not even Azazel gave off such a coarse, dangerous aura. How strong was this woman? But what had surprised Valina most was Kuroka. Valina had always recognized that Kuroka was strong, for she was much better than Valina at everything to do with magic. Her control over Yujitsu and Senjutsu was impeccable, making Kuroka a difficult opponent for the current Valina. The young Lucifer could defeat her, of course, but to do so, she had to make physical contact to use her sacred gear, and that was very difficult. At least, Valina had to control her balance breaker first, something she hadn't achieved yet. Valina didn't know what had happened, but Kuroka had become much more powerful than before. She wasn't as powerful as the other woman's aura, but she was still superior to Azazel's. Seriously, how had Kuroka achieved such strength in just one night? Wait, one night? What happened last night between Kuroka and Draco came to Valina's mind. And as if she were Einstein and an apple fell on her head, an idea appeared in Valina's head. Having sex with Draco meant an increase in strength, or something related to that. It was embarrassing for Valina to think that way, but there was no other reason she could think of for Kuroka to get that much strength. So, if she had sex with Draco, it wouldn't be impossible to get a power that could overcome the bastard rise of him. Nah. Yeah, that must have been it. She only had to have sex with Draco to be stronger. It's not like she minded having sex with Draco, since he was a guy she liked. Besides, she wouldn't mind having to share it with Kuroka either. Valina! Huh? Sai, what are you thinking? Come on, let's go get some breakfast. Draco woke up Valina. She had become lost in thought and did not respond to anyone's words, so the rest of the group entered the building, leaving Draco alone to deal with her. Big bro. Valina pulled Draco's shirt when he was about to enter the kitchen. Yes. Have sex with me? Cough, cough. Draco choked on Valina's words. What the fuck was she saying today? What do you mean? Draco tried to dodge the question. Valina must have made a mistake in her choice of words, right? Yeah, that must have been it. There's no way a little girl like her would come up with something like that. Have sex with me. Sex, sex, fuck. I don't care what you call it. I want you to stick your penis in my vagina and let all your semen out. It seemed that Valina had made no mistake in her speech, and she was clear about her goal. Cold sweat was beginning to run down Draco's back as he saw Valina's serious, determined face. This situation sucked. What was he supposed to do at this point? It was obvious that he had to reject her, since there was no way he was going to have sex with a 14-year-old girl. Kuroka's 16 years had already been his limit, and he had no intention of going below that figure when it came to having sex with a woman. On the other hand, he had just started a relationship with Kuroka. He had no intention of starting one with another woman at the moment. With that in mind, Draco bent his knees until his face was in front of Valina's. No. Draco did not hesitate to give the answer. Huh. And Valina didn't hesitate to show her surprise. Why? Why had he turned her down? There was no way a dragon could reject a couple from a strong bloodline like she was. How old are you, Valina? Draco's question surprised Valina. What did age have to do with it at this point? 13. You're only 13. I'd say you had your first period a few years ago. Your body is still growing, and you have a whole life ahead of you. What's your rush to have sex right now? What's the reason you're being forced to have sex with me? Valina trembled at the sound of Draco. Was Draco making fun of her young age? Even if he was, she couldn't find the strength to hold it against him. She was really desperate for strength. I want to become stronger. Kuroka has become much stronger after having sex with you. That's why I want to have sex with you too. It seemed that this was a conversation where both of them were constantly being surprised. How had Valina come to the conclusion that having sex was empowering? Draco had no doubt that Kuroka's screams had been heard all over the apartment building. He was not ashamed of it, however, but was proud to bring so much pleasure to his sex partner. But this brought the misunderstanding to Valina, who was unaware of Servant's existence. Listen to me, Valina Lucifer. I cannot increase anyone's strength by having sex. The method I used with Kuroka is a different one, and it's one you don't need. I'm sure in 4 or 5 years you'll have a power equal to or greater than that of the gods. You just have to have patience and faith in yourself. I trust you, Valina, and I believe in your potential. Draco stroked Valina's head as he spoke, and his words were no nonsense. Though Valina barely had the power to face an ultimate class, she would have far greater power in the future than that. A power with which she could kill the evil dragon Azidahaka and stand against the greatest beings in the world. Now, let's go get some breakfast. I could cook, but I don't think everyone has the patience to wait. So, I thought I'd make some imperial noodles. Imperial noodles? Just the mention of these is enough to make Valina drool. Yeah, go big bros. Valina raised a fist and followed Draco to where the rest of them were. All this, of course, while she reflected on the words Draco had spoken to her. While Draco was talking to Valina, Kuroka led the rest of them into the building. They didn't know why Valina had reacted this way, but decided to leave it in Draco's hands. Who is that girl? Mordred asked Kuroka. She is Valina Lucifer, a descendant of the Mal Lucifer. She is also the bearer of the Longinus Divine Dividing, which has the spirit of the heavenly dragon Albion. You could say she is a masterpiece of destiny, one of the chosen to snatch one of the places in the top 10 of the most powerful beings in the world. The word Longinus had different reactions in the group. Mordred was curious, as she had heard from Draco that the Longinus were artifacts capable of confronting the gods. Chiron was surprised, but that was it. Valerie trembled, as she remembered all that she had suffered for having a Longinus. Top 10 most powerful beings in the world? What is that? Mordred had never heard that term, so she was curious about it. It's a ranking of the world's most powerful beings in combat power. They're basically monsters that defy the logic of the world. What a monster, huh? Is the old witch in the top? Officially, no. The last thing remembered about Tiamat is that she had power comparable to or greater than that of the original four mouths. Still, her power was not enough to make it into the top 10. Of course, we're talking about her power over 1,000 years ago, so we don't know if her current strength is comparable to those monsters. Many powerful beings were not in the top 10 that have been hidden for thousands of years, and nothing is known about them, so the top 10 could change at any time. Mordred raised an eyebrow at Kuroka's explanation. If someone as strong as Tiamat did not have the qualifications to enter the top 10, how strong was the number one? Mordred was excited just thinking about it. I knew it. This world is much more interesting than my previous life. Mordred didn't say it out loud, but she did think it. For example, Albion, the spirit that resides on sacred gear in Valina, used to be in the top 10 of the most powerful beings alongside his rival, Drake. But they were stripped of their title when they died, and their souls were sealed in the sacred gear's divine dividing and boosted gear. While they were talking, the group arrived at Natsum and Lavinia's place. They were sitting on a couch, talking while waiting for Draco and the rest to arrive. Kuroka introduced them. The blonde girl is Lavinia Rennie, a wizard of the Grauzober organization and bearer of the Longinus Absolute Demise. The other girl is Natsum Minagawa, a carrier of the high-level sacred gear containing one of the four fiends. We've told you about them before. Both girls got up and leaned over to the newcomers. Then Lavinia looked at Kuroka and corrected his words. I am no longer a member of Grauzober, remember? We are now part of Draco's mercenary group. A mercenary group? It was normal for Mordred and the others to be confused, as Draco had not mentioned anything of the sort. I forgot to tell you guys. I've decided to create my own organization, but it's going to be different from Grigori's. We're going to act like a mercenary group, taking on missions that different mythologies give us. Draco entered the room at this point, explaining to the newcomers the latest decisions he had made. Of course, we are unknown to most factions. That's why we're going to be doing work for Grigori and Grauzober for a while. Mordred was momentarily surprised. A mercenary group, that was sure to be interesting. Then she thought about the reasons that had led Draco to form the mercenary group. Glory? Honor? Power? Influence? He wasn't looking for any of that, and Mordred knew it. What Draco wanted with this was to be able to kill more and more, so that he could rise much higher. Knowing that, Mordred approached Draco and placed her arm around his shoulders. Count on me, Master. The idea of the mercenary group had surprised Mordred, but it had also surprised Chiron. This all seemed to be dangerous, but she had become strong after the training with Mordred, so she had nothing to worry about. Count me in too, Draco. Seeing that Mordred had joined the group without hesitation, Chiron did not hesitate any longer and took a step forward. No, I refuse to let Chiron be a part of this. It was obvious that Kuroka was not going to let her beloved little sister be part of something dangerous like the mercenary group/organization Draco had created. Kuroka was an overprotective older sister, and she was incapable of even thinking about putting her little sister in danger. Before, when she thought she had reached her limit, Kuroka wanted to train Chiron so that she would become strong enough to take care of herself. But now that Kuroka had gained a power with which she could protect Chiron from most of the beings on this world, she no longer wanted to let her younger sister be part of anything dangerous. Kuroka's intention now was to let Chiron go to a human school and let her live a carefree life where she could depend upon Kuroka and Draco. Nei-sama, I want to go with you. No, you're not going anywhere. Kuroka was so serious that she had forgotten to add the nya that she always said unconsciously. Draco frowned when he saw Kuroka react like that. He knew perfectly well what the two Nekashu were thinking, and could not help but sympathize with both of them. He understood Kuroka's reasoning, as it was the same one he had fought with the elder Nekashu when he hesitated to turn her into a servant before the Holy Grail War. And he also understood Chiron and her desire not to be left behind by all the people around her. "It's all right, Kuroka. You have my approval, Chiron. Welcome to the group, Draco Dash." Draco interrupted Kuroka before she could say anything more. "We had a similar discussion a year and a half ago, remember? That time it was for training. This is totally different." "It's different, but it's still not a decision you can make. Besides, Chiron has already been involved in something similar to what we're going to do in this organization. If you feel she might be in danger, you just have to go with her, right?" "That's right." Kuroka reacted in a similar way when Mordred offered to train Chiron. At the time, Kuroka did not trust a Mordred who had nearly killed both Nekashu and Draco. "Sigh." She sighed and dropped onto the sofa, right in the middle of Natsum and Lavinia. She looked up at the ceiling and sighed. Kuroka seemed tired and sad about the situation. It was then that, in one quick movement, she embraced Natsum and Lavinia's waists and held them. Between Natsum's scream and Lavinia's little surprise, Kuroka buried his head between the two girls' large breasts. "KKKK Kuroka." Natsum was very embarrassed by what was happening at this time. "Shut up, Nya. I need to recharge energies in the paradise, Nya." Draco knew that at some point he was going to be jealous of some guy for having a relationship with a spectacular girl. Still, he would never have thought that he would be jealous of his own wife. In fact, Draco was seriously thinking about joining the trio of women. Somehow, Lavinia's senses as the big sister of the group, or so Valina and the rest called her, made her detect what Kuroka was feeling. "You don't have to worry so much, Kuro-chan. I'm sure Darakin won't let Shiro-chan be put in danger," Lavinia said as she stroked Kuroka's head. Leaving aside the nicknames Lavinia had used for the Nekasha sisters, Kuroka felt understood by Lavinia. She reacted unconsciously and buried her head deeper in Lavinia's breasts. Without thinking, Kuroka took a small bite of the large ball of flesh hanging from Lavinia's breasts. Then she turned and did the same with Natsum. Afufu. How playful you are, Kuro-chan." Two different reactions, but one that was expected coming from these two girls. Natsum could be seen as the tsundere girl in the group, while Lavinia was more playful. No, Lavinia was the purest girl in the group, without a doubt. The group moved to the huge table where they used to eat, and Draco went to the kitchen to prepare Valina's favorite noodles. Noodles for breakfast? And why not? After all, ramen is the best food ever created in this world. Or at least that's what Valina was thinking right now as she ate her cup of imperial noodles. Valina called the noodles prepared by Draco imperial ramen, as they tasted so good that only emperors were worthy of eating such delicious ramen. She did not say it aloud, but she was the only one worthy of eating this ramen. That is because she is the White Dragon Emperor. Nobody else has the title of Emperor, only Valina Lucifer. Valina doesn't know why, but she feels like her intelligence increases when she eats ramen. That's why at that moment a detail came to her mind that everyone had overlooked. The name! Valina yelled it out without thinking. "What name?" Draco asked. Yafufu, the strongest dragon white emperor in history and a descendant of Mao Lucifer, cannot work for an organization without a name. Yeah, the organization needed a name, and it couldn't be a common name. It had to be a name that sounded intimidating. "A name, huh?" Draco muttered. As expected from VA-chan, she is always attentive to every detail. Well, Valina wasn't going to tell Lavinia that this was something she'd remembered just because she was eating ramen. Mind you, Valina had to say something to Lavinia. "Don't bury my face in your big tits, you fucking cow." Valina blushed as she pushed Lavinia. Seriously, why did Lavinia have the mania to do this to her? Especially with those big tits. It's so refreshing to see Valina acting like a girl of her age. Minagawa Natsum. Valina wanted to protest, but all her concentration was on taking the weight off Lavinia. TCH, why do all the women associated with Master have to have huge boobs? The blonde girl who exudes the terrifying aura. Draco had introduced her as Mordred, mumbled a few words that Valina did not entirely agree with. Though she did not know why Mordred called Draco Master, she was dead wrong on one point. Was she not a girl related to him? So where were her big tits? It seemed that Mordred had felt Valina's resentful look as she smirked and looked at her ridiculously. You're just a girl. Wait 4 years before I can consider you a woman. Valina bit her lips to endure the frustration, but made the wise decision to ignore Mordred and focus on Lavinia. I don't care about the name, I just want to be with Draco Naya. I agree with Kurokane-sama. Chiron and Kuroko were clear about that. The name of the organization? They couldn't care less. Spending time with Draco and her sister was the most important thing to either of them. A name, huh? And Draco kept thinking. Finally, Valina was able to get Lavinia off her back. The voluptuous wizard could only grimace and sit in her seat once more. Now that Lavinia was no longer bothering, Valina could return to the art of eating ramen. And it wasn't 5 seconds before she could speak. The name of the organization is going to be Morning Star. It is known that Lucifer is the morning star, so why Valina had chosen that name was quite obvious. I refuse. It didn't take Draco 2 seconds to respond to Valina's proposal. Morning Star Mercenary Group. Even drunk, Draco wouldn't accept that. But it wasn't an idea that couldn't be worked on. Why? Valina couldn't believe that Draco had rejected it so quickly and without hesitation. The idea was perfect. Draco didn't listen to Valina and started mumbling. Morning Star, the ultimate goal of the mercenary group is peace. Dawn of a world without conflict. Dawn. Dawn. It was in that moment that a memory that was not Draco, or at least not of this dragon life, came to his mind. A certain criminal organization, originally intended to bring peace to the world, was named Dawn. Of course, this organization was part of an anime, so the name was in Japanese. Yes, that name is perfect. Akatsuki. Draco's idea was approved directly by the group. Even the quiet Valerie, who barely said anything, had nodded her head at the name. Speaking of Valerie, Draco had decided to give the girl some time and let her adjust to her current situation before offering her a place in the organization. Aside from the ability to revive the dead, which Draco was not going to use because of the consequences, Valerie's Longinus was very useful. Healing, animesi, soul manipulation, resurrection, and youth inducement. Those are all the utilities that Longinus has in its base form, or all the utilities that Draco remembers. But there was a much more important one that couldn't help but appear in Draco's mind. Valerie could eliminate an individual's weaknesses. For example, she could eliminate a dragon's weakness to Dragon Slayer weapons. Although, since Valerie was rescued from the hands of Rizavim, this impressive ability of the Longinus is never used again in novels. Draco did not know what the reason was, or rather, he could not remember what the reason was, but he assumed it was because Valerie had already been forced to abuse her Longinus to the point where even minimal use already pushed her to the limit of what she could endure. Fortunately, Mordred had rescued her before she was forced into a state of insanity due to resurrecting evil dragons from a level just below the heavenly dragons. The rest of the morning passed quietly. Less than half an hour by train was not enough to bring everything that had happened in a few months up to date, so everyone kept talking for a few good hours. More people joined the conversion to add details, as Valina, Natsum, and Lavinia were not on the train. The time they spent together was very entertaining, and even Valerie smiled a little from time to time, even though she was not participating in the conversation. Lavinia, Natsum, and Valina knew nothing about Valerie, for unlike Mordred and Chiron, Draco and Kuroko had never spoken of her. They asked about Valerie's life, to make her feel more comfortable and enter the conversation since she had hardly spoken at all. Valerie hesitated to speak. Honestly, she was scared. On the one hand, she wanted to trust this group of people who had rescued her from the hands of her own family. They seemed so happy talking together, which was strange for her considering that it was the first meeting of most of them. In fact, it seemed that only the dragon boy named Draco and the Nikomata named Kuroko knew everyone here save Valerie. Valerie, on the other hand, was afraid of being rejected or even sent back to Romania where they would continue to experiment on her. What would they say when they learned she was a filthy hybrid? What would they say when they learned she was a traitor who had let a powerful weapon for her clan escape only because she did not want her friend to suffer as she did? What would they say when... Valerie, you have nothing to fear. Think of this as a new life. as if the Valerie Teeps who lived in Romania had died, and now a new Valerie Teeps had been born in Japan. Of course, I'm not telling you to forget your past. In fact, I advise you not to forget it, because all experiences are beneficial for you, no matter how bad they may have been. You can trust us? You can trust us? Draco's words hit Valerie hard, to the point that she thought she was going to cry. Strangely, she had not cried since the day her best friend escaped the clutches of the Teeps clan. Valerie had resigned herself to her fate and lost all hope. Was it true what Draco had said? Could she start a new life? At least she could give them a chance, right? After all, she had nothing to lose, and she had a lot to gain. And so Valerie recounted her past, summing it up and removing parts that were unnecessary or that she was not yet willing to share. From her birth as the daughter of King Teeps and a human concubine, her friendship with a damper of whom she refused to say the name, to let him escape, to wake up her Longinus when she was going to be killed and being locked up to experiment. Valerie didn't know how they would react to hearing her story, so she closed her eyes. It must have been hard. Valerie opened her eyes in disbelief at Draco's words. But she didn't have time to respond when the rest of the people in the room spoke. You bastards, I knew I should have killed them all at that moment. Master, you should have given me permission to use my noble phantasm. I agree with Imo-sensei. If Chiron says so, I guess we'll have to pay a bloody visit to Romanian Aya. Valerie-san, you can trust us in the future. I can't call you VA-chan, because VA-chan is VA-chan. So from now on, I'll call you Vale-chan. We both have in common that we have a Longinus, so you can consider me your friend. As a descendant of Lucifer and bearer of the divine dividing, I cannot look away when I see something like this happening. Valerie didn't react immediately, but looked at them all with her eyes and mouth wide open. She didn't know when it had happened, but water drops kept coming out of her eyes. Later, Valerie learned that she was not the only person present with mixed blood. Kuroka, Chiron, and Valina were also part human and the other part a different race. In the case of the sisters, they were half Nekashu, while Valina was half devil. Draco was absent from the conversation and went to prepare the meal. But not many minutes passed when he felt a presence enter the kitchen. Valerie? With his level of senjutsu, Draco did not even have to turn around to see who it was. Every living thing had a unique aura that set it apart from others, and Draco had already memorized Valerie's. I am a useless and untalented girl. My vampire powers are nothing special, and I barely know how to use them. All I have left is my Longinus, but I'm afraid to use it. Still, you still want to join us and not be left behind. Draco could feel Valerian nodding her head. He said nothing for a moment, which made Valerie nervous, and continued to prepare the meal. Have you ever cooked? I used to cook my own food since there was no one to feed me when I was little. I see. That means you know how to use a knife. Well, come here and help me cut the vegetables. Though a bit confused, Valerie nodded and helped Draco with the vegetables. The kitchen was not particularly large, so the two of them were less than a foot apart. The first time Valerie had seen Draco, she could only describe him with the word rude. A tall, handsome, muscular boy, just the opposite of her cute childhood friend. To see Draco diligently cooking, putting all his concentration into preparing food for the rest, was like Valerie had opened the door to a new world. Earlier, you spoke about yourself. Indeed, your life hasn't been the best, but I can tell you it could have been a lot worse. Valerie didn't know, but Draco did. If Mordred hadn't taken Valerie out of that place, she was going to be experimented and corrupted for the next 4 or 5 years. She had been saved from hell before she went into it. Literally. Draco didn't give Valerie time to respond and continued talking. One girl has been suffering cruel experiments for years. Another has been abused by her father since she was conscious. Another has been forced to watch her sister being abused. Another has seen all her schoolmates turned into monsters. Another has been rejected by her parents and raised to be a weapon of destruction since birth. Valerie stopped cutting the vegetables while listening in shock to Draco's words. If what he said was true, then all the girls in the room had suffered as she had to a greater or lesser extent. And Valerie hated herself and her feelings right now. Because what she was feeling right now was relief. She She wasn't so special after all. She wasn't the only one who had suffered. She had something in common with everyone in this group. Valerie did have a place here. None of the girls are going to leave you behind, and I'm sure they're all going to try to help you in some way. You don't have to worry about not having any skills. Look at Natsum. She's just a teenager if you take away her sacred gear. That means you can consider yourself part of the group, Valerie. Mind you, I advise you to think twice before deciding to join the mercenary group. Once you get inside, I'm going to be very strict with you for your own good. The goals of this mercenary group are very high, as there are many expectations placed on us, so a low level will sooner or later lead to your death. Do you understand? Yes. Valerie nodded, and Draco said nothing more. The two continued to prepare the meal, and Draco instructed Valerie from time to time. Draco and Valeria had already finished cooking, and Draco picked up the plates of food. Before he left the kitchen, he turned to look at Valerie. 10 days. I want your answer in 10 days. I want you to think very carefully about your decision during this time. With that, Draco turned again and headed for the dining room where Mordred was already screaming desperately for food. Draco found the first problem that very afternoon. Although the apartment building was large and spacious, perfect for many people to live in, there was still a lot missing. To begin with, there was nowhere to train. Of course, the guys could go and use Grigori's facilities, as no one would say anything to them if they did. Still, it left a small taste in Draco's mouth that his organization was using someone else's facilities. On the other hand, Draco was beginning to miss the building he was living in before. Most of all, he missed the roof where Draco could train Senjutsu without any problems. Now he could only use his room for training, but it was not the same. Well, he had to settle for the moment. That evening, Draco was busy with Chiron and Kuroka. Little Nekashu had been unable to make any obvious progress during the 6 months she had been with Mordred. It was not that Chiron did not practice her Senjutsu. It was that she had virtually no time to do so. Mordred's training was very strict and took up most of the morning and afternoon. The rest of the time is spent eating and resting. Chiron was not like Draco, who could practice Senjutsu and rest at the same time. She would die if she did not rest, especially considering the hellish training of Mordred. Mordred was a tough, strict teacher. There was no doubt about that, but she was also a great teacher. No one had a skill that approached hers with the sword, or anyone Chiron had ever known. Even Arthur Pendragon, who was known as a genius among geniuses and had a skill with the blade that had not been seen for many, many years, had suffered defeat after defeat against Mordred. But Mordred's skill was not just related to the sword. The most dangerous thing about her was her fighting style, where she did not hesitate to use anything to help her in battle. She combined her skill with the sword with kicks, punches, headbutts, etc., and that was the style that Mordred had been teaching Chiron. Of course, Mordred had taught Chiron how to use the sword. Chiron had pleasantly surprised Mordred. The Nekashu was not a genius among geniuses as Arthur Pendragon was, but she learned quite quickly. After a year and a half of training, Mordred could tell that there was no one Chiron's age who could match her in skill. Although that didn't have much credibility, since there are few 12-year-olds who train alongside the son of the King of Knights on a daily basis. Chiron wanted to improve her use of Senjutsu, as she wanted to create her unique style using what Mordred had taught her as a foundation. She wanted to mix Mordred's brutal and wild style with the Senjutsu and Yujitsu of her race. Hearing this, Draco was sure he had a little monster in front of him. It seemed that women with flat breasts were destined to be brutal in combat. When Chiron asked him and Kuroka for help, neither refused. And so they spent all afternoon helping Chiron with her training. In the night, Draco couldn't intimate with Kuroka as Valina, and Chiron invaded his room. This is where Draco found the second problem, as the bed in Draco's room was designed for 2 people, not 4. Thus, Draco began to miss his 16-person bed in the underworld. The surprise came the next morning. At mid-morning, the doorbell rang, and Natsum opened the door to see who it was. Kuroka and Mordred were still sleeping, while Chiron and Draco were training Senjutsu. Valerie, on the other hand, had gone with Lavinia to a place unknown to Natsum. So, since she was the only one doing nothing, she went to greet the unexpected visitor. When Natsum opened the door, he found a mother-daughter couple. How did she know they were mother and daughter? Because the girl was the spitting image of her mother. They were practically the same. Good morning. My name is Akino Himejima. Natsum looked at the little girl and what appeared to be her mother. Or was it her older sister? The woman seemed to be in her early 20s, though her true age was unknown to Natsum. And she wasn't going to ask her either. Hi, I'm Natsum Managawa. Do you need anything? Although Natsum did not know the two girls, she asked politely. They might be known to Draco and company. You must be one of the students at that school. I'm Shuri Himejima. Nice to meet you. Is Draco home by any chance? Shuri introduced herself in a calmer and more refined manner, displaying the manner she had learned since her childhood in the Himejima clan. As Natsum expected, they were known to Draco. Yes, but I'm right here. Natsum was startled, not expecting Draco to appear right behind her. Draco! Akino did not hesitate and jumped into Draco's embrace. Hello to you too, Akino. To what do we owe your visit, Shuri? Draco stroked Akino's head as he spoke to Shuri. He had to admit, stroking the girl's silky hair was addictive. Well, Akino, and I want to show you something. But Miss Natsum says you're busy, so Akino, and I can come back later. Shuri says with a slight smile. No. Kuroka and I were helping Chiron with her senjutsu, but Kuroka can handle that on her own. I'm not ashamed to say that she's far superior to me when it comes to senjutsu. I didn't think you could be so humble, Draco. Honestly, I'm surprised to see you admit defeat in anything. Or maybe it's because it's Kuroka we're talking about. Draco felt her eyebrow tremble. As expected of Shuri Himejima, she had very keen senses. It's good to admit defeat once in a while. Draco shrugged. Well, as long as you don't forget about Akino, you can do whatever you want. I, having been raised in an ancient clan, understand better than anyone what a figure man like you represents and needs. Okay. Didn't you want to show me something? Now that I've given Kuroka all the work, I have the morning off. But, Draco, is it all right to leave all the work to Kuroka? Akino asks with genuine concern. In fact, it was Kuroka who made me come to greet you. She wanted to spend time alone with Chiron, exclusive cat talk, or so she called it. Well, it's okay if the lazy cat does something once in a while, too. You're so mean, Draco. Akino chuckled. Having been living for 6 months with Kuroka, Akino could tell she knew her a little. She was a lazy cat who didn't like to do anything that might tire her physically or mentally. Now that you mention Kuroka, her little sister and her teacher arrived yesterday, right? Akino and I would like to meet them. Why don't we invite you to lunch? In a restaurant? No. At my house? It's okay, I guess. Although you're going to have to make a lot of food since there's no shortage of us. If I'm not around to cook, I doubt any of the people in this apartment can cook anything that could be considered food. Do you mind if they all come over and eat? How many are you in total? 8. Looks like I have to go buy some more ingredients. Barrakiel and Rainair are coming too, so there are 12 of us to eat. We're running out of ingredients too, so if you don't mind, I'm going to accompany you to the supermarket. Natsum and Akino only waited silently for Shuri and Draco to finish deciding what they would eat today. It was impressive to see how in just a few minutes the fate of more than 10 people had been decided. Well, what do you want to show us? Draco asked. Follow me, Draco. Akino pulled Draco's hand out of the building. Era, my daughter is so impatient. Natsum Managawa. Can she call you Natsum? Yes, Shuri-san. Just Shuri is fine, Natsum. Why don't you come with us? No. I don't want to meddle in other people's business. Natsum was quick to refuse. It was clear that these two girls had come looking for Draco, and she did not want to be the third wheel. You don't have to worry about that. What we're about to see is something that concerns you and everyone in your organization. Finally, Natsum nodded and followed Shuri out of the building. Draco and Akino had already gone ahead, but it did not take them long to catch up. In fact, they had barely moved a dozen yards from the door of the apartment building. Draco looked surprised, as she was staring at something with wide eyes. Hey, Draco, what are you dashed? Natsum didn't finish the question. That's because she was even more surprised than Draco. Grigori's methods sure are impressive. Being able to do this without Mordred or Kuroka detecting them is impressive. Draco could not help but praise Grigori's abilities as he looked on what lay ahead. Next to the apartment complex, a 6-story building had appeared. This building had been gone the day before, and Draco did not know whether to laugh or cry when she saw that it was completely identical to the building where she used to live in the underworld. What is the meaning of this, Shuri? Draco did not need to look to know that Shuri and Natsum were approaching. Era, I thought you'd be happy to see your old home. Whoa, I didn't know Draco couldn't live in such a big house. Natsum had already put aside whatever common sense she still had inside. After all that had happened over the past few days, that a huge mansion should now appear next to the apartment building was no surprise. So Natsum decided to simply be swept away by the current. Yes, this house is exactly like the one I have in the underworld. Natsum simply nodded when she heard Draco say that he has a home in the underworld. Although several people lived in the house of the underworld, including Barrakiel, the house was owned by Draco. It was a gift Azazel had given him when he heard that he had saved the lives of Akino, Shuri, and Rainier. Shuri, what is the meaning of this? Draco asked again. How impatient you are, Draco. To Draco's irritation, Shuri evaded Draco's question again with a smile. Akino realized something was wrong when she saw that Draco's eyebrow was shaking. Okasan, can you stop teasing Draco? Era, are you starting to prioritize your man over your mother? Sigh, and to think that this moment would come so soon. Okasan. Draco watched the mother-daughter interaction with a smile. This interaction would never have taken place if he had not saved them. So he is proud to have succeeded in changing their cruel fate. Well, since my daughter wants to, I guess we can go talk about official business. But this doesn't seem like a suitable place to talk, so why don't we go inside? Sitting around a table in the new house are Draco, Natsum, Akino, and Shuri. I, Shuri Himejima, am acting as Grigori's representative right now. I have something to negotiate with your organization, Akatsuki. The name of this organization is Akatsuki. Dawn Akatsuki, not a bad name. Well, that aside, I came here to make you an offer. Specifically, I'm here to offer you a property exchange. This property for the underworld, right? Now that we're officially separated from Grigori, it doesn't make sense for the leader of Akatsuki to own property in Grigori's territory. Shuri nodded. As a representative of Grigori, all she said was not her own opinion, but that of Grigori. Since Shuri had nodded, she meant that those who agreed with what Draco had said were Azazel and Shemhazai. What Draco and Azazel wanted to show the rest of the world was that Akatsuki and Grigori were two different organizations. Akatsuki was a mercenary organization that Grigori had hired to carry out a mission. The fact that Akatsuki's leader had property on Grigori's territory could give the outside world a wrong idea about the relationship between the two organizations, and it could appear that Akatsuki is a subsidiary of Grigori. That was the exact opposite of the purpose of creating Akatsuki, as what Draco wanted to achieve was international fame as an independent organization. I guess you came prepared. That's right. Shuri nodded and placed her purse on the table. She opened it and took out a stack of papers. That's it. Draco returned the papers to Shuri after completing all the necessary procedures. Grigori had already gone ahead and put Draco in charge of the property that had been built in a single night. Having allies who are one step ahead is always satisfying. Draco only had to transfer ownership of the underworld to Grigori. Likewise, he read all the papers in case Azazel had put some sort of joke in them. Even if there was some nonsense, though, Draco had no intention of listening to Azazel. Yes, my role as Grigori's representative is over. Seriously, why do they give such an important role to a modest housewife like me? Shuri Himejima is a modest housewife? Although Draco wasn't going to say otherwise, Shuri Himejima, who had been trained to be the next, wasn't just a mere housewife. But I still have a matter to attend to, not as Shuri Himejima, but as Akino Himejima's mother. Shuri took one look at Akino that Draco deciphered as concern. Why would Shuri be concerned? Draco! Akino rose suddenly. I want to join your organization. Sure, welcome. I don't care if you refuse. I got permission from Mom and Dad to do it. Akino-san, Draco hasn't rejected you. Akino was stunned. But Mom said Draco would refuse because girls like me shouldn't go in a battle. Draco sighed internally. That was surely the excuse Shuri had given Akino to try and make her forget the idea of joining them. Apparently, she had not achieved the intended result, but Akino had been left with some doubts. Of the 8 of us in Akatsuki, I am the only man. Besides, stop with these prejudices against women. They're absurd. Why couldn't a woman join an organization just because she's a woman? Then we have one more partner. With Akino-san, we are already 9 people. Nay, Draco, are Akuzukun and Samajima-kun coming? That's right, but not just them. I intend to recruit the other 2 four fiends, and there are a few more people I'm interested in. Draco began to speak to Natsum, leaving behind an Akino who had not yet come to terms with the ease with which Draco had accepted. She then smiled and gave her mother a mischievous smile. Her father had refused Akino's idea to go with Draco, but her mother was not in favor of the idea either. They preferred that she remain at Grigori, as she had the potential to rise to a high position in the organization. In the end, Akino was very stubborn about leaving with Draco, and there was nothing his parents could do. Barakiel was even more stubborn, but Shuri stepped in and allowed Akino to join Draco. Although Shuri had complained, it was she who had taken on this job that Barakiel should have done to accompany Akino. Very well, this afternoon you will have all your belongings left behind in the underworld. Kuroka's too, of course, along with Akino's. And so, Draco got a new house, identical to the old one, and a new member in his organization. Talking over lunch that day, in which Barakiel and Rainier also participated, it was decided that the girls would move into the new building, which was a replica of Draco's previous home, while the boys would live in the apartment building. The exception to this was Draco, who also slept in the new building. Draco could not have been more grateful to have his imperial-sized bed back. Kuroka, Valina, Akino, and Chiron slept with him daily, and even Mordred had joined the night group. In one of the continuous rooms, Natsum and Lavinia slept, and in the other Valerie slept. Cookie Samejima had been released from the hospital 5 days later, so he was back in the apartments. To that day, he was the only one living there. He had not yet fully recovered from his injuries and depended on crutches for his daily life. In a short time, it was said that he would return to his normal life. Draco was quick to offer him a position at Akatsuki, which Cookie accepted without hesitation. He knew that he could no longer live a normal life, and it would not be long before he would be haunted again unless he obtained something or someone to back him up. You were safe, Accuse. 10 days had passed since the final battle against the Utsusimi agency. Tobio, who had just returned to the apartment building after being discharged, was being jokingly beaten by Cookie's crutch. Next to him was his childhood friend, Sae Tuju. Like Cookie, he had not fully recovered and was still using the wheelchair. That you didn't choose to leave those memories behind, although it would usually be the nicest choice. Isn't that hard? Natsum talked to Sae. Unlike Sae, Natsum and Samajima's friends had been sealed off. They were still unconscious during the progress, so it had been the decision of the now members of Akatsuki to erase their memories of the incident. Thus, of the former second-year students of the Ryuka school, except for those with sacred gears, it was the only one who was aware of the truth of the entire affair. After all, Jin-chan is so cute. Sae responded as such, as June, who had transformed into a big dog, was licking her cheeks. For Jean, who had undergone such major changes, it was not that he had become more emotionally attached to Sae instead of Tobio, but rather that it was only an illusion caused by the fact that he had allowed himself to be spoiled by her. Unlike the transformed Jean, the sacred gears of Natsum and Kuko, Griffin and Byakusa, had once again taken on the appearance of a hawk and a cat, respectively. They probably adopted their previous forms for convenience in everyday life. Seeing that Natsum had arrived, Cookie smiled bitterly. However, you cannot possibly say that with that appearance, can you? As for what Natsum was wearing, it was a uniform supplied by Azazel's organization, Grigori. Using blue as its basic shade, the design took some small deviations when compared to the typical high school uniform. This was the same uniform that Rainier wore when she first met Draco. The dragon had also seen Akino wear it when she trained with Barakiel. It can't be helped, can it? Since I go to school prepared by the Governor General, I was told to wear this, Natsum said as she looked at her own appearance. That is correct, this was Nephilim's uniform. Just as Azazel promised Draco, he was going to allow Akatsuki members who were unfamiliar with the supernatural world to train on Nephilim. Upon hearing Natsum's words, Samajima's facial expression changed to one of complete boredom. Seriously, is the school uniform a joke? I think it's better not to complain about this school's uniform, since you haven't seen Akatsuki's uniform design. I wonder if Draco, the one suffering from Chinibyo, and not Valina. Natsum sighed. According to Draco, the Akatsuki members had to wear long black capes with red clouds, a red interior, and a collar at chin level. He had even gone so far as to add a straw hat to hide the face of the members. But that idea had gone beyond the limit of what most could accept. During the meal with Barakeel and Shuri, Draco informed Natsum that the fallen angel was to be his teacher. They were to train with Rainier and Aquino, with whom they formed the Barakeel class. So you don't like my design? A dull voice sounded from behind Natsum, sending shivers down his spine. Yeah, that's not what I meant, Draco-kun. Well, never mind. You only have to wear the uniform when you have an official mission, to have something that distinguishes us. I want when someone sees us to say, Akatsuki's guys are here, or something like that. Draco walked past Natsum as he explained the reasons for this uniform. There was one more reason, but he wasn't going to say it was because he was a fan of a certain show in his previous life. I agree with you, boss. Cookie gives Draco a thumbs up. Boss. We work for you now, don't we? That's why I have to call you boss. Draco decided to ignore Cookie for the time being. Today, everyone had gathered at the apartment building, specifically in the same room where they had seen the video about the Utsasimis. Lavinia had been the one who had asked those who had been active in the whole Utsasimi agency affair to form a meeting. That is, those who were present were Draco, Tobio, Cookie, Valina, Natsum, and Lavinia. Seeing that they had all arrived, Lavinia again told the reason why they had been asked to meet here. The reason we have gathered here is that I want to be able to explain why I cooperated with everyone. That is, what was the reason for Lavinia to participate with them against the Four Fiends project implemented by the Utsasimi agency? Her search for that magician, the one who had cooperated with the Utsasimi agency, how she had started in the first place. Those magicians had disappeared somewhere without inviting the survivors of the agency. Lavinia explained, "This is something from a long time ago. I belonged to an association of magicians, another one different from Grausaber, one that was divided into two due to a certain event. The remaining half on Earth has not had a change of direction until today. However, as for the other group, using the original barrier magic, they build a unique territory in the dimensional gap that extends on both sides of the borders between the worlds." Lavinia took out a book. This was a picture book. Most likely, it was a book that she wanted to show everyone. This book is... Lavinia kept talking as she took the photo book in her hand. Appearing inside this book is the proof behind the reality of this world they created. The author realized these worlds by chance, and it's certainly the territory they had created in the dimensional gap. Lavinia then said it clearly. These wizards are the Wizards of Oz. As expected, all members found this information surprising. Only Valina accepted everything without being disturbed. Draco was also surprised, but for different reasons. That a childish story is real was no reason for Draco to be surprised. What was surprising was that he knew nothing about them. Nothing at all. They are not even mentioned in the DxD story, although they probably changed their name to Hexenact. Draco could connect the dots as he recognized Walburga in this vast underground chamber when he went to check on Lavinia, the adult which should be her teacher and predecessor. Grausaber, along with Grigori, has been pursuing the wizards who had infiltrated from the magical domain known as Oz since they allied themselves with a traitor to Grigori, the fallen angel of the Cadre class Satinal. This was something Draco already knew, but Tobio and the rest didn't. Now, it was Draco's time to intervene. From now on, Akatsuki's job is to investigate and neutralize this alliance. But that is only secondary, as Grigori and Grausaber are going to be our allies and take care of the hard part. Our main objective is to ensure the rescue of the two remaining fiends. That evening, Draco accompanied Natsum and Aquino to the underworld. Natsum was greatly surprised to see that the building's elevator could take them to the underworld. Once in Grigori, he accompanied them to where Barrakiel should be training Rainier. It did not take long for them to arrive at the place where the two of them were waiting. Rainier, like Natsum and Aquino, wore the blue uniform of Grigori. I brought you the girls, Barrakiel. Please be gentle with Natsum. It's her first time. Draco greeted Barrakiel that way. My first time? What are you talking about? Pervert. Eki. Hentai. Natsum blushed at Draco's words. What are you talking about? I'm saying it so you won't die of exhaustion later. Your physical condition is even worse than Rainier's when she started training with Barrakiel, and it wasn't long before she died. It's obvious you won't be able to handle the training if he has no mercy on you. Natsum seemed to want to say more, but Draco had already marched on Rainier. We have work to do, Draco said to the fallen angel. I will be in your care today. She leaned in slightly. Draco had promised Rainier to help her with her training, so that was the reason he was here. Draco's goal was to help Rainier unlock her sacred gear and her hereditary ability. With Rainier's current ability, she should be able to use her sacred gear with no problem. However, she's unable to manifest it, so she probably can't do it because of mental issues. Draco was going to try to do what he could to fix that. The same goes for her sacred flames, which she should be able to use, but she doesn't. Draco had no doubt that this was related to the incident she had as a child, in which her parents died due to Rainier's flames. He was sure that something else should have happened, but Rainier probably did not remember or was too young to notice. Draco had his work cut out for him. Draco and Rainier separated from Barrakiel's group, as they were to have specialized training. For this, Draco had asked Azazel to use a specific training room. The place where Rainier and Draco arrived was a single empty room, painted completely white. Once the door they entered the place closed, it seemed that Rainier and Draco had entered a different dimension. What are we going to do here, Draco? Rainier asked Draco, who was inspecting the room. Not bad. There is some sort of magical barrier surrounding the room, and its function is not only to protect against damage. It also blocks out any sound that wants to come in or out. Draco was muttering to himself. It didn't seem like he heard Rainier's question. Draco, what are we going to do here? Rainier asked again. You want to know? But wouldn't that ruin the surprise I have in store? Draco's half-smile gave Rainier creeps. She thought she could escape Barrakiel's infernal training if she went with Draco, but she had a feeling that the dragon's training would be far worse than this. Until now, Barrakiel's training consisted of running until Rainier's body couldn't take it anymore. After that, his training was focused on the spears of light. The training with the light lances was divided into two phases. The first, Rainier trained her skills with the spear. That is, she trained her skills as a lancer. The second, she trained her ability to create multiple lances of light. This ability was the same as her uncle had shown in the confrontation with Kuroka. Rainier also could create multiple light spears, but they were nowhere near the number her uncle could create. According to Azazel, Rainier's uncle could create hundreds of spears if he prepared himself beforehand. That is, he could not create them immediately, but he could if he took some time. Anyway, Rainier's uncle was a fearful opponent if he prepared himself enough, especially since his spears were more powerful than normal ones. Draco was sure they could hurt him even with his Aegis. Rainier's growth potential was far greater than her uncle's. The flame she could use, Holy Flame, is the same flame that the Archangel Uriel possesses. And obviously, they're far superior to what her uncle could use. Just with that, Rainier has the potential to reach the same level of power as her grandfather, or even surpass it. Add to that the unknown sacred gear that she possesses. According to what Draco had discussed with Azazel, Grigori had used his instruments to measure the quality of Rainier's sacred gear. Draco was surprised that Grigori had instruments that could do something on the level of measuring the power of sacred gears. Still, it made sense considering that this organization took sacred gear users to strengthen itself. In Azazel's words, Rainier's sacred gear was on the verge of destroying the measuring device. In other words, it was a sacred gear of the highest level, but it was not a Longinus. It would be at the level of sacred gears like Forbidden Baylor View and the Four Fiends. These are sacred gears that can be considered Longinus with just one push, but they haven't crossed that barrier yet. Initially, these sacred gears should not be able to cross that barrier at any time. But because the God of the Bible was dead, the system that kept the sacred gears in order doesn't work 100% because Archangel Michael can't make it work perfectly. Now, a little push can make these sacred gears step forward and evolve. So, these sacred gears have the potential to be considered Longinus. Both Azazel and Draco were confident that more sacred gears of that level would appear in the near future. In fact, Draco was aware that Gaspar Vladi's sacred gear was going to start being considered as a Longinus after the spirit of the evil god Baylor awakened his consciousness. Draco has only read up to Volume 21, but Aeon Baylor is not considered an official Longinus until Volume 25. For the time being, I'm going to ask you to sit down. Draco pointed to the center of the room. It's okay. Rainier nodded and did as Draco had asked. He did the same and sat down in front of Rainier, about 2 or 3 meters away. Do you know what this place is? Draco started the conversation with this question. This is the place where Azazel and Valina train. That's right. This is the only place in all of Grigori where Valina and Azazel can train without alerting the rest of the living beings that are nearby. Azazel offered me this place when Valina and I had the duel, but it's too small for me to fight with all my strength. Here you can use all your strength without being afraid to destroy the place because the barrier that protects this room can withstand attacks from Malclass, even if it's only a few. Rainier was confused. What Draco's information just gave her was something she already knew, which means I'll be able to use all my strength, and no one will be able to hear your screams for help. From today on, only you and I will know what's going to happen inside this room. Draco said bluntly. No emotion could be appreciated by his tone of voice. Rainier's body shook. It seemed her instincts had alerted her correctly, as this training was going to be much harder than barracudas. Rainier felt nauseous just thinking about it. Draco, I'm not feeling very well. I'm going to go to the bathroom for a moment, Rainier said as she got up. You better not move if you appreciate your life. Yes. Hearing Draco's cold voice, she did not hesitate to obey him. From today, I want you to come to this room every day at 9 a.m. Until lunchtime, you and I will be in training. In the afternoon, your routine will be the same as it used to be. Do you understand? Yes. Rainier sat back down and looked in the direction of Draco, who was sitting right in front of her. He had his eyes closed and seemed to be meditating. She cherished the idea of escape, taking advantage of the fact that he was not looking, but dismissed the idea as she thought she would die before she could get 1 or 2 meters forward. Draco opened her eyes, fixing her gaze on Rainier, and spoke. I need everything you can tell me about the incident that happened 10 years ago, where your parents died. Once again, Rainier shook slightly. I told you, didn't I? I'm not ready to talk about it. It doesn't make sense for you to keep running from your past, Rainier. Draco didn't look away from Rainier's eyes at all, so she looked away when she couldn't stand that intense look. She felt that Draco wanted to reveal all the secrets that were hidden in Rainier's soul, although that was not far from the truth. I don't remember very well the details of what happened that day. I was very young, and I seem to have hit my head when I became unconscious. Maybe that blow is the reason for my lack of memory. Rainier explained why she couldn't talk about what happened in the past. So far, so good, or so she thought. Because of the barrier around this room, I can't use Senjutsu as much as I wanted to. Still, it's more than enough to be able to read your emotions. You are lying. Ugh. Actually, Rainier wasn't lying at all. It was true that she hit her head as a child, causing her to lose much of the memory of that event. However, the dream she had been having lately had caused her to remember every detail of what happened that day. But even if she did remember, Rainier didn't want anyone to know the truth about what happened that day. She had murdered her own parents, so she was nothing but worthless garbage. You're not going to talk, huh? It's okay. You don't have to right now. Don't worry. You'll talk sooner or later. Draco stood up and waved for Rainier to do the same. What are we going to do now? Rainier asked with a bit of insecurity in her voice. Fight. Are we going to fight? Rainier didn't finish asking her question when Draco shot at her. The fallen angel could only see Draco's cold eyes before she felt her feet leave the ground. An intense pain burned from the center of her stomach, where Draco's fist had connected. A sour-tasting liquid ran up Rainièr's throat and, "Gwa!" She puked it up. "If this was a mission, you'd be dead by now. Your reaction times are lousy. Come on, get up." Rainière only had time to cover her head with one arm when Draco's kick came. Bang! Her back hit the wall. She didn't know how she was conscious, let alone how the bones in her arm weren't broken. If that kick from Draco had hit her head, Rainière could have died. Having learned his lesson, Rainière got up as fast as she could and created a lance of light. Draco wasn't going to let Rainière take a second to breathe, so she had to act almost on instinct. If Draco was going to attack head-on, she was simply going to aim her spear forward. If he didn't stop or duck, the spear was going to go right through him. Crack! But nothing was going to happen positively for Rainière on this day. Draco lunged at her, just as Rainière expected, but the spear did not go through her skin. The spear broke into small pieces on contact with Draco's skin. The new skill Draco obtained after fusing a noble phantasm with his own body, Aegis, divine scales of the Nephilim dragon, makes any attack that does not overcome Draco's defense completely neutralized. In other words, even if Rainière manages to hit Draco, no attack from her will hurt his skin. At best, she'll get her clothes torn off. Of course, Rainière does not know this, as it is Draco's best-kept secret, and he had no intention of letting her know it either. You managed to react in time. I'm impressed. It didn't look like Draco was mocking Rainière with those words. He really thought the first day was going to consist of him beating Rainière unconscious. That was Draco's plan. He had seen in numerous animes how the characters got to power up in life and death situations. So what better way was there to get Rainière to unlock her powers than by subjecting her to life and death situations daily? Come on, this is far from over. Draco and Rainière's training continued for the next few hours. Actually, more than training, one could consider that Draco was beating Rainière's brains out. And, although the training was supposed to last about 4 hours, Rainière lost consciousness before he reached 2 hours. Once she fell unconscious, Rainière had the same nightmare again. Every time she entered the dream world, the same evil voice came back to haunt her. Rainière didn't know what this person looked like, but it sounded like a woman because of her voice. Still, Rainière couldn't turn around and look at this person. No, Rainière knew she could do it. She knew she could escape those nightmares. But she was afraid. Come on, Rainière. Say my name. Call me. Rainière woke up shaken. Cold sweat ran down her entire body, causing her discomfort. You finally woke up? Rainière didn't need to look to know it was Draco who had spoken. How long have I been sleeping? Rainière asked as she got up. As she performed this action, she realized she felt different somehow. Like something had changed, but she couldn't tell exactly what it was. A little over 2 hours, Rainière stood and finally looked up at Draco, who was leaning against the wall with his eyes closed. She noticed an abnormality again, and that was that her body did not hurt at all. After the brutal beating she had taken from Draco, she felt as if her body was a new one. Draco, you want to know why your body doesn't hurt, don't you? Rainière nodded her head. You should know since this is not the first time I've applied this treatment on you. You're talking about the Azazel cream, right? But wasn't it just a simple massage cream? That's right, it's the cream created by Azazel. Did you really think that a cream created from the most expensive and legendary materials in each mythology served only as a simple massage cream? Ugh! Now that Rainière thought about it, it was a real waste to use such a precious cream in massages. Still, she couldn't say that out loud since the cream belonged to Draco. Since he signed the contract with Azazel, all of this guy's cream that Grigori created ended up in Draco's hands, so he was free to do whatever he wanted with it. And even though it was such a valuable cream, Draco was willing to spend it to heal her wounds. Wait, how did he apply the cream if she had her clothes on? Oh! Rainière felt her cheeks warm at the thought of Draco stripping her naked to apply the cream. It was normal for her to feel something was out of place. Had Draco taken advantage of her while she was unconscious? I have to go home and prepare for the girls' lunch. Why don't you come with me? Won't I be a nuisance? No, your presence is always welcome. Hearing that, Rainière nodded shyly and decided to follow Draco into the human world. Before returning to the human world, they passed by the place where Barakiel was teaching. Apparently, the training had ended long ago, and the cadre was teaching Natsum and Akino the knowledge of the supernatural world. Sacred gears, also known as God's artifacts, which are items that have powerful abilities bestowed upon humans by the God from the Bible. The God of the Bible created the sacred gears as a part of his system to enact miracles on earth and appeared in other factions around the human world. Influential figures from the past and present are carriers of sacred gears, although the vast majority of them do not have sacred gears for combat. Within the sacred gears, there are 13 who are considered superior and who has the power to kill Maus and gods. These are called Longinus. The sacred gears of Tobio, Lavinia, and Valina are Longinus. Barakiel was teaching Natsum and Akino a lesson about sacred gears. This information was more intended for Natsum than for Akino, since for the latter, it was just a review of what his parents had already taught her. Sacred gears can have various effects and abilities, such as Canis Lycaon, which can manifest a small black dog that can summon blades from itself. Sacred gears can also adapt and evolve based around their wielder's thoughts, needs, and feelings, gaining abilities or qualities as time passed, first seen by Jean, who had become able to grow distorted blades from shadows. To make the lesson better understood, Barakiel was giving an example that Natsum knew personally. Sacred gears has an ultimate state of activation, referred to as the balance breaker and forbidden move, which is the most powerful manifestation of the sacred gear. Once reached, the balance breaker can be entered again far more easily than the first time. Balance breaker is a bug in the system created by the God of the Bible, which can alter the balance of the world, and that is why it is called balance breaker. It is currently considered a forbidden power by the 3 Bible factions. It is known as the final activation state of a sacred gear. Balance breaker is often activated by high emotions combined with a change in the heart or spirit of the wearer. Balance breakers can be divided into 3 categories. Most balance breakers, including the subspecies, could be placed under the crest side. The crest side is classified under strengthening, evolving to the point of transformation. By pursuing the arrogance of themselves and sacred gear, the balance breaker can further evolve by creating a state of fusion with their sacred gear to produce the abyss side. The third type, X side, consists of the balance breaker that could not be classified in the 2 previous categories due to its sudden variation. It is considered an exception among the exceptions. In your case, Natsum, your sacred gear is an independent avatar type. The independent avatar sacred gear are sacred gears that create an avatar in the form of an animal most of the time. They can act independently while protecting their owner or joining them in combat. With this, Barakiel's lecture ended, and Natsum and Akino left the class. On their way out, they met Draco and Rainier. They were waiting for them to leave so they could go home. "What a surprise, Draco Coin. I didn't expect to see you here," Natsum said. "Draco always picks us up after training, so I'm used to it," Akino added. It seemed that Natsum and Akino were getting along quite well. Suddenly, something flew in the direction of the group. Its speed was impressive. At least its speed was at the level of a high-class devil. The object slowed down and landed on Natsum's shoulders. It was none other than Hakshan, Natsum's sacred gear. "Good boy, Hakshan." Natsum stroked the soft fur of the falcon with her cheek. "By the way, where's Valina?" Draco asked. "Oh, she left when we finished our physical training. Since she couldn't train with Azazel, she said she was going to find Mordred to have a little sparring with her." Barakiel left the classroom and locked the door while answering Draco's question. "Has she gone to fight Mordred?" "Shit, this is bad. Something wrong with that, Draco?" "It doesn't look like Mordred's a bad person. She's got a bit of a childish attitude, and that surprised me. Since she's named after King Arthur's incestuous son with his sister Morgan, I thought she'd be evil or something." "She is the daughter of King Arthur," Draco muttered when he heard Natsum. "Did you say something?" "Forget it, I didn't say anything. I just hope Mordred didn't inadvertently kill Valina. She's not the best person to control her strength, so I wouldn't be surprised if she got overexcited and ended up causing a disaster." Perfect, one more problem for Draco. At least he knew that Mordred hadn't killed Valina, since he hadn't received any experience points. It was the first time Draco was relieved of not receiving any experience points. The girls and Draco said goodbye to Barrakiel, as they had to return to the human world and would not see him again until the next day. It must be nice to be able to eat Draco's food every day. I'm jealous of you, Aquino. His food is definitely one of the best I've tasted in over 2,000 years of my life. Barrakiel spoke as he stroked his daughter's head. You shouldn't say such things, Oda-san. Oka-san will be angry if she hears you say that, and I'm sure she'll punish you. Shit, it's true. Barrakiel looked like he was going to suffer a lot, but he was probably going to enjoy it. After all, the red dye on his cheeks betrayed him. Once they arrived at Draco's house, they found Valina lying on the couch. Her body was covered in bruises that she had earned by defying Mordred. Before the girls could do anything, Draco ordered them to go take a shower. They had been working out for much of the morning, so the smell they gave off was not the most pleasant. How are you? Draco approached Valina. I'm a wreck. That monster has shown me no mercy, and I have been unable to do anything about it. Even using Divide, I couldn't stand up to her. She just crushed me with brute force. That's Mordred's style. Although she excels in the use of the sword, she will not hesitate the moment she has to abandon her sword to achieve victory. Ugh. She hasn't even used her sword against me. For Draco, it was no surprise that Valina was defeated by Mordred. It was no exaggeration to say that there were very few in Grigori who could fight Mordred, let alone none at all. Perhaps Azazel, using his balance breaker, and Barrakiel with his holy lighting could do something against Mordred. Draco also understood that Shemhazai was of a similar level to Azazel, but did not know to what extent. Had Mordred reached the level of the gods thanks to the Old Man system? Draco wasn't sure. What level was she compared to Fate's servants? The servants of the Holy Grail War and the servants of the system took on strength in different ways. They both start from the same base. That is, at level 1 they are the same, but their way of gaining strength is different from that of the system. The servants of the Draco system gain strength from Draco's experience. The more experience he gets, the stronger they are. Unlike the servants of the Holy Grail War, they are not dependent on the magical energy of their master, Draco. The servants of the Holy Grail War are based on 3 factors in which their strength is either increased or decreased. The first one is the cultural sphere. The land and the recognition they receive, there are factors that play a role in their strength. The closer they are to the stage of their legend, a geographical boost, and the more that they are known makes them stronger, bringing them closer to the strength they had in their legend and providing them with more of their equipment displayed in their legend. Depending on the circumstances, it is possible it can bless them with additional noble phantasms. The boost from recognition alone is not that large in making a difference in power, as when Rin Tosaka is speculating on Gilgamesh's ability to overwhelm other servants. Land plays a greater factor with Ku Chulin, Heracles, and King Arthur being 3 heroes around the same level of strength when summoned in Europe. Each would be strengthened in Europe and benefit most greatly in battle in their home country, though Heracles' fame would allow him to display excellent power throughout all of Western Europe. Ku Chulin, gaining 0 influence from not being known as well in Japan, does not fully display his shining existence on par with them while in Fuyuki, but would anywhere else in the world. The second one is the magical energy of the master. The more powerful the magical energy of the master, the greater the servant will be able to reach the strength they displayed in their legend. If they cannot provide proper energy, or if the servant lacks a master for a time, their parameters lower in proportion. If it is a lack of energy, unknown factors will lower parameters and skills with some servants, while the master's way of life may affect others. King Arthur, serving under several different masters, displays a number of different sets of parameters due to fluctuating levels of energy. Under Shiro Amiya, she receives no energy because his magical paths are obstructed and cannot display her full strength. Kiritsugu Amiya is able to supply energy to have her be stronger than when under Shiro, but her luck is affected by his personality due to still not providing enough energy. Rin Tosaka is an excellent magus that allows her to unleash her full abilities without being affected. 2 servants who would be balanced differently under other circumstances may find the balance tipped when one has better master support. The last one are the container parameters. Unmodified by the strengths and weaknesses of specific heroic spirits, the containers of the 7 standard servant classes of the Fuyuki Grail War possess known base parameters. The parameters of the containers have not been shown to affect summoned servants, allowing for parameters higher and lower than those of the containers. If the hero should be utterly weak to the point of defenselessness like Stheno and Uriali, the containers can increase their strength far beyond their regular selves. Can you at least move? Velina was lying on the couch, and it looked like she was resting and slacking off. But Draco doubted that this was the case, as Velina was not one of the girls who wasted her time in this way. Sigh, seems I can't hide it from you, big brother. The truth is, I don't think I can move in the next few hours. At least Mordred has been kind and hasn't broken anything, but I feel like my muscles have been completely destroyed. Just as Draco thought, Velina was too hurt to make even the slightest movement. She had even given up on turning her head. What had Mordred done to Velina that she couldn't even move her neck? Draco didn't even want to think about it. Sigh, you can't go on like this all day. You'll worry the others. Draco approached Velina. What are you doing? Velina was surprised when Draco placed one hand below her knees and the other on the back of her neck. Ignoring Velina's shout of surprise, Draco carried her in his arms princess style and led her out of the room. Draco, let go of me. What do you think you're doing? Normally, the girl would be kicking and screaming her head off. However, Velina had no strength at this point, so the slightest gesture was impossible for her. It was strange. This same Velina was the one who had proposed to Draco to have sex the day before. Why did she mind being carried by him? I'm helping you, you idiot. What are you going to do if I put you down? I don't need your help. I can fend for myself. Draco realized that Velina wasn't ashamed of him carrying her in his arms. She did not want to depend on anyone, and that Draco had to help her move was an embarrassment to her. She didn't want to depend on anyone. It was not that she did not trust him, but that she wanted to be strong in front of him. It's not bad to depend on others from time to time, Velina. You can't understand it. Draco continued to carry Velina quietly through the house. Velina realized that Draco was not going to let her go, so she gave up trying to convince him. For some reason, she felt comfortable being held in Draco's arms. She felt happy and a little frustrated. I don't understand why you're so desperate for power, and I'm not going to force you to tell me. However, you have to keep in mind that there are people who care about you. You're not alone anymore. You have me, Kuroka, Lavinia, Zazel. You're someone important to many people. Even if it's only a little, let us help you with that burden on your shoulders. Whether or not Draco's words had reached Velina's ears was unknown to the young dragon. She had decided to close her eyes, and her face was showing no emotion at all. Finally, Velina opened her mouth to ask, "Where are we going?" "To my room." Velina didn't say anything else, but she started to blush. She remembered the proposal she made to Draco the day before. Now that she thought about it, hadn't she been too forward at the time? Draco had rejected her at once, but now he was taking her to his room while she was completely helpless. Was he going to devour her? Surely the talk he had given her about friendship was some nonsense he had concocted to make her relax. Don't misunderstand her. She didn't mind giving her virginity to Draco. In fact, she doubted there was a better match than him. But she didn't want this to happen when she was helpless. But she was a strong girl. Even if she was going to be raped, she wasn't going to complain. If Draco did something bad to her, Velina was going to take revenge with her own hands. Just like Draco had said, he took Velina to his room. When he entered, he gently put her to bed, trying to make her suffer as little pain as possible. "Can you wait here for a moment?" "I won't be long," Draco asked with a smile. Velina nodded and followed Draco's figure with her eyes as he left the room. Well, now that he was gone, Velina could think of different ways to escape this situation. The simplest way would be to get someone's attention. Aquino, Natsum, and Rainier were in the large indoor baths on the first basement floor. There was no chance that Velina's voice could get there without being discovered by Draco. Valerie and Lavinia had gone somewhere again today, though Velina did not know what the place was. Draco probably knew something, but it wasn't like Velina was going to ask him. Chiron and Kuroka were training Senjutsu on the rooftop, the same place Draco used to train. Mordred was watching them, as she had nothing better to do. Valina could try to escape on her own, but it was going to be very difficult. Any movement she made hurt like 1,000 termites were eating away at her body. It was by far the worst state Valina had been in a long time. Valina had had that training fight on the first basement floor. As of the various training rooms there are, one is made specifically for fighting. Of course, it's nowhere near the level that Draco and Rainier were using that morning. Before, she reached the sofa taking advantage of the adrenaline in her body and her sheer willpower. But once she lay down on the sofa, she became unable to move any muscles. In other words, she couldn't do anything. She could only leave her fate in the hands of Draco. Are you sure about that? You can still use the forbidden movement. A voice sounded in Valina's mind. This voice didn't surprise Valina at all. She had been hearing it for a long time. Yes, she had probably heard Albion's voice since her father discovered that she was the bearer of the Longinus. No, it's too dangerous. You know I can only use it for 10 seconds. More than that, and the effects could be irreversible. It's true, wearing the armor is not something you can handle at this time. Your body is too weak and small to do so. For that small body that cannot withstand my power, as the hacker Yuku, I would put your life in danger. Valina, who had not yet developed, was unable to use the power of Albion due to her lack of physical maturity. Yes, and I don't want to die yet. Not when I still have to finish off Rizavim and his son, Razvan Lucifer and Rizavim Levon Lucifer, Valina's father and grandfather. They were Valina's main target. They were the source of Valina's hatred and the people she wanted to kill personally. But Valina could not face them at this time, as they were too strong for her. The main problem was Rizavim. His demonic power exceeded that of the original Mao, and he was considered one of the 3 super devils or transcendental devils, along with Surzex Gremory and Ajuka Astaroth. But Rizavim was not as powerful as the other 2 super devils, as they can overpower him easily. Still, he was a much more difficult opponent for Valina than the other 2 super devils. The reason for this is that he possessed an extraordinary power called Sacred Gear Canceller. Yes, he had the power to cancel the sacred gears created by the god of the Bible. For Valina, who was quite dependent on her sacred gear, it was a big problem. But why do you distrust Draco so much? I don't think he's the kind of man who would do this. It's not that I distrust him. All men are like that. Don't you remember what that bastard Razvan was doing with my mother? Don't you remember the beatings he gave her just because she healed my wounds and then raped her in front of me? Valina knew that remembering Razvan and Rizavim, along with the intense pain she was suffering, had affected her thinking. In her right mind, Valina would never have doubted Draco. Albion knew this, but he had decided to play along with Valina. It was at times like this that all the resentment a person carried inside her came to the surface, and it was also the best time to try and heal the wounds a person carried deep within their soul. You can't judge all men like that, Valina. You can't put that bastard as a reference for all men. I know, and I don't. So, why do you think Draco is going to do something bad to you? Because I offered him my body the other day. He must have regretted rejecting my offer. I am the descendant of Lucifer and Lilith. My body has all the attributes to attract the opposite sex. Even in this situation, Valina could not put aside her haughty attitude. Besides, Draco is a dragon. Your race has been known to have an uncontrollable libido. Valina's cheeks blushed a little. Ha, you're not wrong at all. That's engraved in our instincts. Our birth rate is among the lowest of all races, even lower than that of the devils. But it was you who offered Draco sex in the first place. Why are you so afraid now? Valina didn't know how to answer Albion's question. I think I understand you're scared. Impossible. I am the descendant of Lucifer and the bearer of the divine dividing. Something like this can't frighten me. No, it's obvious you're scared. You're afraid the man you've fallen in love with is a scumbag like your father. Although Valina wanted to deny it almost desperately, deep down, she knew that Albion was right. If Draco had accepted her proposal the day before, it would be a completely different matter. First, because she would only see it as a requirement for a strength boost, and second, because it would be consensual sex. But now that she knew that she could not increase her strength through sex, the feeling she had discarded for the sake of increasing her power came back into the equation. As Valina talked to Albion and lost herself in thought, the door to the room opened. Noticing this, Valina tensed up mentally as she couldn't do it physically. To Valina's surprise, Draco did not enter the room alone but was accompanied by Kuroka. Vianya, I heard you took a severe beating. But don't worry, because I'm here. What nonsense are you saying, Kuroka? It's not silly. I heard it the other day on one of the shows Chiron watches, and I thought it was really cool. Valina was confused by the development of the situation. Kuroka will take care of your wounds, Valina. Even if she's not very good, she knows enough to make you move again. I still have to make the food, so I'll leave you in her hands. And Draco left as soon as he reached the room, leaving Kuroka alone with Valina. Valina was still in shock. What was going on here? Kuroka went over to Valina and put a hand on her body. Using Senjutsu, she extended her senses so that she could get a better sense of the damage Valina had suffered. That idiot Mordred, she doesn't know what it means to hold back. Now I'm worried about what Chiron might have suffered during all this time he's been with her. Kuroka muttered as he inspected the wounds. Sigh. Healing your wounds with my Senjutsu will only speed your recovery process, but you will still be unable to move for several hours. I'm going to have to use that cream. I see. Draco had already noticed that, Valina didn't understand the meaning of Kuroka's words. Draco had realized that the only way to heal Valina was to use Azazel cream. To use the cream, Draco would have to undress Valina, so he had called Kuroka. Not that Draco felt embarrassed or anything similar since he had already applied the cream to Rainier that morning. Still, he felt that Valina was obviously uncomfortable. I'm going to take your clothes off, okay, Valina? Kuroka asked. Valina, a little confused, nodded her head. Kuroka took Valina's clothes off, careful not to hurt her too much, and even took off her underwear. Valina looked just as she had come into the world, though it was not a pretty sight. All of her skin was covered in purple bruises, and it seemed to be quite painful. Kuroka opened a drawer in the room and withdrew a jar containing the cream Azazel had created. It's a little fresh, so it might be a little uncomfortable, Kuroka called it in. She took some of the creams and began to slowly apply it to Valina's skin. As Kuroka had said, the cream was very fresh and it caused a slight chill in Valina's body. The treatment continued silently while Kuroka applied Senjutsu over the cream to speed up Valina's recovery. In the end, it didn't take Kuroka 15 minutes to apply the cream to all of Valina's damaged body parts. Well, I'm done now. Now you have to rest another 10 minutes, and you can walk again, although with some difficulty. Wait an hour, and 90% of your wounds will be gone. Kuroka seemed quite satisfied with the work she had done. I'm going to let you rest. You can put your clothes on once all the cream has been absorbed by your body. See you at lunchtime. Kuroka said goodbye with a smile. Before she could leave the door, she heard Valina's words. Thank you. To which Kuroka responded with another smile. You're welcome. Valina was surprised. As Kuroka had said, Valina could move after 10 minutes of rest. 10 minutes she had used to reflect with Albion. She had come to the conclusion that all her previous fears were useless. Draco was not like Raven Lucifer. Valina got dressed, left Draco's room, and went down to the first floor. The wounds still bothered her, but she felt better with each passing second. Azazel's cream was truly miraculous. No, it wasn't just Azazel's cream. Kuroka Senjutsu had a lot to do with it too. We've been waiting for you, Va-chan. The one who greeted Valina was Lavinia, who was helping Draco set the eating utensils on the table. The rest were already sitting at the table, except Draco, and were waiting for Valina to eat. Draco stepped out of the kitchen and noticed that Valina had just arrived. Are you feeling better? Yes, at least I can move. Thank you very much for your help. Valina responded with a bright smile that surprised Draco. He was stunned for a second, but recovered quickly and replied with another smile. I'm glad. Draco's smile made Valina blush and look away. The 10 minutes had given Valina much to ponder. By the way, Mordred, don't you have something to say to Valina? Draco told the girl that had already started eating before the others. Yeah. How annoying you are. Mordred, I'm coming. Mordred reluctantly rose from the table, probably because she didn't want to stop eating at this point, and approached Valina. She stood in front of the little girl and bowed deeply. "I'm sorry I overstepped. I should have controlled my strength better. I didn't want to hurt you." Mordred's apology was sincere, though she was not entirely to blame. During the confrontation, Valina refused to give up, so Mordred had thought she could continue fighting. The power to divide Valina's strength had surprised her, and Mordred had ended up getting too excited about the fight. "You don't have to apologize. You've shown me that I still have a long way to go." Am I hearing correctly? Is this the same Lysidra Sensei we all know? Samajima Cookie. I've told you many times not to call me Lysidra Sensei. Everyone laughed when they saw Valina explode. Taking advantage of the situation, Draco approached Valina and whispered in her ear, "Would you like to join me this afternoon on the side?" "What for?" "I think I've found your destined rival." Valina's eyes glowed at the sound of it, and she soon nodded her head. Draco pulled out his noble phantasm, Golden Drive, and Valina was surprised to see Draco pull a motorcycle out of thin air. "You have the ability to manipulate space?" Unbelievable. That was the only conclusion Valina could come to. Still, she hadn't seen Draco open up the space to get the vehicle out. It was like Golden Drive came out of nowhere. Draco didn't bother to explain anything to her and got on the bike, not forgetting to gesture to Valina to get on behind him. She did as he instructed. "Hold on to me, we're going to go pretty fast. If you don't, you're going to fall off the bike," Draco warned Valina. "It's okay." To Draco's surprise, Valina did not argue with him, and she put her arms around the young dragon's waist. Then she rested her head on Draco's back. "Valina, this position is the most comfortable. The descendant of Lucifer cannot make a trip feeling uncomfortable." Valina gave that excuse as she pressed her hug. Draco could only smile wryly and get his noble phantasm working. Although the top speed of Golden Drive was 2,500 kilometers per hour, Draco wasn't going to use that top speed. First, because even if he could hold that speed, Valina might not be able to. And second, because continuous use of Golden Drive consumed a lot of MP. It was okay if he maintained a moderate speed. Still, it was impossible to hold off on the distance they were going to travel while going at maximum speed. Draco finished starting the bike and headed off towards Kuo City. "Aya, you're going too fast." Valina shouted in surprise when Golden Drive accelerated to speeds that a bike shouldn't reach. "Don't be surprised. I'm only driving at a moderate speed," Draco said as he laughed. Valina could only squeeze Draco harder for fear of falling off the bike. Draco could feel a couple of soft objects against his back. Though Valina was only 13, she had already begun to develop. There was no doubt that she would be a voluptuous woman in the future, so Draco was already licking his lips as he thought about what he would be able to enjoy after a few years. "If this is moderate speed, my strength is greater than Great Red's." Draco could only laugh non-stop at Valina's desperate voice. He did not expect her to react in this way, knowing that she could run at speeds beyond what the human eye could grasp. She should be able to handle a moderate speed of Golden Drive. Of course, a moderate speed was about 500 kilometers per hour. To get to Kuo from the city where they lived, they had to go through a 300 kilometers. This is a journey that should take about 3, 4, or even 5 hours, depending on several factors, including the roads chosen and the traffic density. Everyone knew how annoying a truck was when you were in a hurry. After a few minutes, Valina got used to the speed of the vehicle and began to enjoy the thrill of high speed. This was a new and exciting experience, and she could use it to hold on to Draco. Before, Valina respected Draco because he had managed to defeat her in the past. That's why she had been considering him her older brother, but there weren't many romantic feelings involved. But after today's incident, Valina had developed a feeling of attraction to Draco, even though it was unconscious for her. By now, she knew that Draco was a person she could trust. It was okay if she trusted him with her past, right? They arrived in the city of Kuo within an hour's drive. Draco parked his bike right at the entrance to the town. "Well, here we are. Kuo Town. Is this the town where my destined rival resides?" "It doesn't seem to be very special. Just an ordinary human city," Valina commented upon arrival. "Well, this is a city that's under the jurisdiction of the devils. If I'm not mistaken, the ruler was a woman of the house of Belial, although she was murdered a few years ago, Draco spoke from his knowledge. If he was not mistaken, there should be about 4 years left for the main events to take place. Everything that happened in DxD started in 2008, and right now it was 2004. Cleria Belial had been killed along with Masaomi Yagaki in 1998 for various reasons. Does anyone dare kill anyone from the Belial house? Valina seemed shocked to talk about this. Surprised? Draco asked her. Of course. Who dares to harm a member of the Belial family? The Emperor is very famous, not only among the devils, but in the whole supernatural community. I've seen some of his rating games, and I can tell you he's impressive. Totally worthy of being called a genius. His demonic power rivaling that of a Mao and his use of power his clan has crowned him as one of the most powerful powers of the devils. It is said that only the current Lucifer and Beelzebub are superior to him in terms of power. Still, with his use of worthless, he may be able to confront them without problems. Dihauser Belial. Draco was lost in thought for a moment. Dihauser Belial was a mighty powerhouse. There was no doubt about it. He was the emperor of the rating games, #1. He had been since he had come to that position many years ago, and he was literally immovable. That's right, Dihauser Belial was undefeated. The top 5 of the rating games had powers comparable or superior to the original Mao, and are described as ultimate class devils of ultimate class devils. However, at least 2 of them reached that position by using the forbidden king piece. But this was not the case with Dihauser Belial. He was described as a monster by Bedizabaden, the 3rd in the rankings at this time. Without the use of the king piece, he has destroyed each and every one of his rivals in the rating games, with Rudiger Rosenkreutz being the only one capable of giving him some trouble. This supernatural power, which had the potential to defeat and kill gods, was to be one of the antagonists in the future. But he was one of the ones that Draco didn't want to kill. He wants to recruit him. Valina interrupted Draco's thoughts. You seem to know something about what happened to the Belial girl, don't you? Tell me. Draco could only smile when he saw the puppy dog eyes Valina was giving him. It's okay, but you have to be clear that what I'm about to tell you is confidential information. Even Azazel may not know the real reason Cleria Belial died. Valina was surprised to hear from Draco. There was little that Azazel did not know, especially given Grigori's intense spy network. Her interest in what happened grew exponentially. 6 years ago, the ruler of Kuo was Cleria Belial. As a member of the Belial clan, she is the cousin of Emperor Dihauser. She had a quiet life in Kuo, but she made a fatal mistake. What happened? A delegation of the church had a residence in this city, surely to control the movements of Cleria. The church and the underworld have maintained the statu quo for some time, and they did not confront each other on the surface. With no excuse to act against Cleria, they could only monitor her movements. But, a member of that delegation fell in love with the Belial girl, and the Belial girl fell in love with the exorcist. This, of course, is something neither side could accept, and they were both killed. Draco told her the shallow reason why both of them had been killed. He looked to see what Valina's reaction was, expecting a boring look at the typical Romeo and Juliet impossible love story. Ugh, such a tragic love story. Damn the church and damn the underworld. Valina seemed to have gotten sentimental. She even looked like she was going to shed a tear. But that's not the real reason Cleria Belial was killed. Wasn't she killed because she had a relationship with an exorcist? Valina seemed surprised. As much as she was in a relationship with an exorcist, she was still the Emperor's cousin. Also, her relationship with Dihauser was very close. At best, she would be stripped of her title and territory and sent back to the underworld. So why kill her? There's a deeper reason, isn't there? Maybe. She knew something she shouldn't have. Exactly. What I've told you, while true, is just a cover-up created by the old bastards who control the underworld government. The old devils of the Great King's faction. The political rivals of the new Mao faction. Exactly. Cleria Belial discovered information about the unknown king piece, and how the old devils were using it to control the rating games. What? Valina couldn't believe what she was hearing. If what Draco was saying was true, wasn't the rating games a fake? Yes, the rating games are corrupt. Actually, I know of two people who are definitely using the king piece. The number 2 spot and the number 3 spot. Of the top 10, I'm sure Diehauser Belial, Rival Phoenix, Rudiger Rosenkreutz, and the Great Dragon King Tannen do not use that piece. Of the rest, I'm not sure, although it's not something I'm interested in either. Once again, Draco paused to observe Valina's expression. She looked a little depressed, as if she had taken a blow. Is something wrong? Draco asked. Valina recovered after listening to Draco. She sighed slightly and shrugged. All the members of the top 10 are people I admire, and I want to fight and beat them in the future. This is especially to Roygun Belphegor. I admired her. She's a girl on par with Mao, but I didn't expect this to be because she was cheating. Valina had grown up in Grigori these past few years watching videos from Roygun's raiding games. In particular, she admired her ability to use the crack skill. Knowing that one of her idols was cheating was a blow to her. But she had suffered worse in this life, so this was nothing. Whether Roygun was cheating or not, that wasn't Valina's problem. Roygun's strength was still there, so Valina hadn't lost the will to defeat her. By the way, where's my destined rival? What do you know about him? He has to be someone impressive like me, right? In fact, he or she may be more talented than I am. That would surely make our battle interesting. Valina seemed particularly excited to talk about the wearer of boosted gear. It's a shame Draco had to disappoint her once again. Nothing like that. For a start, no one could be more talented than you, Valina. If you want to have a decent rival, he'd have to create numerous miracles in order to reach your level. Valina's face darkened. From Draco's tone, it seemed that the wearer of boosted gear was someone who was not up to the task. By the way, Albion, do you detect your rival Drake? For the first time since Draco had met Valina, he went directly to the dragon that resided within Lucifer's descendant. No. Are you sure he's here? I can't detect him at all. Then you can't detect it, that's problematic. Albion? Draco. Valina was surprised at how casually Draco spoke to Albion. Was it really the first time they spoke? And what about Draco? Didn't he say he had information on the Red Dragon Emperor? You haven't woken him up yet. At least it hasn't changed from my information, Draco muttered. Draco was careful. If Vala was a girl in this alternate reality, Issei could change as well. From what Draco had discovered, the vast majority of events remained the same, but there were slight differences. The reason Draco was more concerned at this point, however, was that he did not yet know where he had obtained one of his fate points. When he rescued Shuri and Akino, he changed the fate of the two girls. But he received 3 fate points instead of the 2 he expected. At first, he thought that extra point belonged to Rainier, but now he was sure that was not the case. That point would belong to Rainier if, for example, he had left her to die. However, he had not changed the fact that she was going to Kuo and die at the hands of Rias Gremory. So, who did this fate point belong to? Draco did not know, but his suspicions were directed at Issei Hayadu. That's why he was careful right now. To begin with, they were in enemy territory while being uninvited, so they couldn't cause a scandal and draw unwanted attention to themselves. But if Albion could not detect Drake, that meant that either Issei was not in Kuo, or Drake had not woken up. And the second was the most likely. Draco and Valina were walking the streets of Kuo. They were looking for the bearer of boosted gear, Hayadu Issei. They were looking for a boy of about 13 or 14 with brown hair, but that was too vague a description for Valina. Basically, they were looking for a young version of the main character in DxD. Time passed as Valina pointed to children who fit the description Draco had given her, but none of them were the boy they were looking for. In case Issei was a girl, as had been the case with Valina, Draco was also paying attention to girls with the same characteristics. Hey Draco, are you sure the Red Dragon Emperor is in this town? Valina looked at Draco warily. She was beginning to doubt him. Hey, you think it's that easy to find someone? We're talking about a normal guy, so he's probably at home right now. I understand that, but what makes you so sure the Red Dragon Emperor is in this town? Draco answered Valina's question with a mysterious smile. Moo, don't be like that. Tell me. Valina clutched Draco's shirt as she asked him for answers with a puppy face. Draco could only sigh helplessly and stroke Valina's head. To the outside world, Draco and Valina seemed like a sweet pair of brothers. From their Western faces, they looked like Westerners who had lived in Japan for quite some time. In the end, Draco and Valina got tired of walking around senselessly. They decided to go into an ice cream parlor to rest for a while. A young waitress came to serve Draco and Valina. "I want a chocolate ice cream, and she wants—" Draco looked at Valina, asking her what flavor of ice cream she wanted. "I want vanilla ice cream." Valina jumped up, almost demanding the taste. Of course, vanilla ice cream for the lady and chocolate ice cream for the handsome man. The waitress directed a flirtatious smile at Draco, to which he responded with a modest "thank you." Draco could hear the grunts that Valina was letting out underneath. "Why did you choose vanilla?" Draco asked to shift Valina's attention. "White represents me." Valina's answer was sincere. Since she was the White Dragon Emperor, Valina was naturally drawn to that color. By that logic, she should detest the color red, but Valina was simply indifferent to it. The Dragon Emperor Red was not someone she had to hate, but someone she had to confront. The waitress returned with the ice creams, and she left them on the table with a smile. She did not leave without giving Draco another flirtatious smile, to which he responded with another polite smile. Draco began to eat the ice cream, but stopped when he felt a piercing glance. "Humph." Valina turned her head when Draco looked at her. It was evident that she had been the one who had directed the piercing gaze. Valina and Draco ate the ice cream in silence. It was not an uncomfortable silence, but a refreshing one. Both were enjoying their ice cream in silence, not worrying about anything else. Draco finished eating his ice cream and looked at Valina to see if the girl had done so as well. Strangely, she had stopped eating ice cream and was distracted looking in another direction. Draco followed Valina's gaze and noticed that she was staring at a particular table. At this table, which was a few feet away from them, there were 3 people enjoying ice cream. A little girl, about 5 or 6 years old, was enjoying her ice cream while a couple, her parents, were watching her. It was a family that, like many others, had taken advantage of the afternoon to spend a good time together. Valina looked at the scene with envy and longing. Before Draco knew it, she had already started talking. "My father is the grandson of the first Lucifer, which makes me the great-granddaughter of the original Mao. However, my mother was a mere human. If there is one thing in common with 90% of the old devils, it is that they despise humans and hate half the devils like me. Fortunately for me, the descendants of the Mao lost the war, so the descendants of Lucifer, Beelzebub, Leviathan, and Asmodeus had to hide in the depths of the underworld. For that reason, my existence is unknown to the vast majority of devils." Valina kept looking at the family as she spoke. "My first 5 years were no different than any other child in the underworld. Because we were isolated from everyone, I never had a friend my age. But I didn't care. I had a father and mother who loved me." As Valina looked at that family, she probably remembered those moments from her childhood. "Everything changed when my sacred gear woke up. My father, Razvan Lucifer, couldn't stand a half-devil like me having more potential and power than him. I didn't understand it at the time because I was so young, but he was not only jealous, he was also afraid of me." A little sigh came from Valina's lips. He didn't know what to do, so he turned to my grandfather. Rizavim Levon Lucifer, Lucifer's son, had nothing better to do than tell him to abuse me to feel superior or something. And that's what my father did. Draco could tell there was a difference when Valina had named her grandfather and when she had named her father. To Razvan, she seemed to have a slight hatred, but indifference prevailed. Valina, however, exuded immense hatred and intent to kill every time she named Rizavim. That person made my mother and me suffer a lot. Razvan, his mind was played out and destroyed by Rizavim. He went insane, but maybe a trace of sanity returned to his mind, or maybe it was because the guilt he felt consumed him. Whatever the reason, he decided to abandon me at the edge of fallen angel territory, giving me a chance to escape from his endless torture. There, it was Azazel who picked me up when I was about to starve to death. As she finished her story, Valina looked away from the family and back into Draco's eyes. In those eyes, there was no longer sadness or longing, only anger and determination. "I want to save my father and free him from that painful life, and I want to kill Rizavim. My mother, my father, and me have suffered because of that scum. Although Valina hated her father for everything he had done to her and her mother, she understood that it was all due to Rizavim's influence on him. This did not absolve him of his sins, but it did diminish Valina's hatred for him and increase her hatred for Rizavim. In the end, Valina wanted to save Razvan by giving him a quick death, and she wanted Rizavim to suffer before he died. The first thing Draco said was, "You don't have the strength to do either." It was cruel, but it was the cruel truth. Not only that, but Valina could not save Razvan because he had already been killed by Rizavim. I know, Rizavim's demonic power is immense, and he has an ability called Sacred Gear Canceller that can cancel my divine dividing. There's no way I can defeat him on my own right now, and probably not in the next 10 years either. The aura around Valina became depressing. Sigh. Draco sighed and stroked Valina's hair tightly, earning a hard look and a pout from the young girl. You are the most talented member of all Akatsuki, and at the same time, you are the most troublemaker. What are we going to do with you? TCH, stop playing with me. This is a mission I have to carry out alone. Valina dodged Draco's gaze. He took Valina's head in one hand and forced her to look at him. Hey! Valina wanted to protest more, but fell silent when she saw the gentle look in Draco's eyes. You're not alone, Valina. Since you joined Akatsuki, your missions no longer concern only you. You mean to say that... Valina opened her eyes like plates. That's right. Finishing off Rizavim Levon Lucifer is now one of Akatsuki's goals. Draco proclaimed with confidence. Valina could not believe that Draco could place such a significant burden on the shoulders of the entire organization. Well, thinking about how monsters like Mordred also belonged to the organization, there was no doubt that the goal could be achieved sooner than Valina had planned. But I want to be personally involved. I want to kill him with my own hands, Valina demanded. Of course. Valina smiled slightly. This trip may have been to find the Red Dragon Emperor, but the result had been very satisfying even though they had not found the boy. Then Valina realized that Draco was showing a stunning face as he looked at something behind her. And to think we'd find him here of all places. Is this fate? Valina turned around to see 3 boys her age entering the ice cream shop. One of them was bald, and another one had glasses. But the one who caught her eye the most was the third boy, the most common of all. She felt that there was something about that boy that caught her attention. There was no doubt about it. I feel the power of my rival, but it seems he hasn't woken up yet. Albion's voice came from the white dragon-shaped stuffed animal on Valina's shoulder. It wasn't necessary, but Albion liked to talk through the stuffed dragon. This stuffed dragon had been the first gift Azazel had given Valina. So it's a boy. For some reason, Draco was relieved to know this. Hey, Motohama, now we're going to your house later to have porn videos. The bald kid didn't care that he was in a public place, and he talked about watching porn videos openly. The boy with glasses, Motohama, adjusted his glasses and smiled slightly. Of course, I secretly bought a new plus 18 movie. I'm sure you'll like it, Issei Matsuda. Pay. The whole perverted trio was inside the ice cream shop. How could this trio of idiots have sex only in their heads, even when they're so young? Well, our work here is done. Let's go, Valina. Draco got up and left some money on the table to pay for the ice cream. Valina got up and followed him. Draco's main objective was to confirm if Hayuru Issei was still in Kuo and if he had the boosted gear. On the other hand, he had also confirmed that Draig was still sleeping, as Albion had reported that Draig was inactive. They passed by the group, and Valina stood for a moment in front of Issei. The boy was confused to see a foreign girl standing in front of him. You are disappointing, Valina said. Huh. Issei was confused. I wonder if I should kill you now, so I can meet another possessor soon. No, you're my age, so you must be my destined rival. Still, you're disappointing. Issei didn't understand anything that was going on. What did this girl want? Wake up quickly, Draig. I want you to give me a good fight. With that, Valina went on her way to Draco, who was waiting for her at the door. Issei followed with a glance at the girl and crossed paths with the other young man's heterochromatic eyes. Issei's eyes opened wide. Issei, Haidu, we will meet again soon. After leaving those words behind, Draco left with Valina. Hey, Issei. Issei came out of his stupor when Matsuda called him. That boy. How did he know Issei's name? No, that was the least of it. That boy had horns. Why didn't anyone notice that? And that girl, she was cute, but Issei was scared. The intensity she emitted had left him paralyzed. She was definitely dangerous. That boy is a normal human, and I can't even feel magic power in his body. Valina complained while walking with Draco. Yeah, that kid is just the opposite of you. If you're the strongest white dragon emperor in history, he's the weakest red dragon emperor in history. Oh, this sucks. Draco knew that Valina had a valid reason to be frustrated. As a rival, there was no doubt that Issei was disappointing. At first, you may think so. From the beginning, it is impossible for any being that is human or half-human to have a potential close to yours. Your talent is unmatched, so only a person capable of creating a miracle after miracle can be considered your rival. Draco explained to Valina. You think that kid who goes around yelling at Pei can do that? Not for nothing, but Valina didn't seem to think much of Issei. Draco shrugged. Don't underestimate what an Ipei can do. Who knows? Depending on your development, you may even motivate him. Personally, I would consider it a perfect motivation factor. Valina, listening to Draco's words and following his gaze, lowered her gaze and fixed it on her chest. Her face blushed to her ears, and she began to punch Draco in the chest with small punches. Pervert. Lolikan. Hentai. Eki. Lolikan? No. You're making a mistake. I'd rather spend the night with Kuroka than with a girl like you. It's still a few years before I want to lay a hand on you. Draco laughed slightly and accelerated to avoid Valina's attack. I'll kill you. After calming Valina, Draco returned to the house with her on the motorbike. It was another hour of quiet ride, with both of them quietly enjoying each other's company. By the time they returned home, a few hours had passed. In fact, there were barely 2 hours left until dinner. What are you going to do now, Valina? Draco asked as he got off the bike. Valina got off behind him, but she didn't move from the spot. She sank into her thoughts, pondering what she could do next. In the end, she could only ask Draco, "What are you going to do?" Valina's question took Draco by surprise. He didn't have anything planned to do that afternoon either. He had to prepare dinner for tonight, but since he didn't want to do anything complicated, a half hour in the kitchen was enough for him. For the rest of the time, he had nothing to do. Maybe he saw what the other girls were doing, or wasted his time watching TV. He could even train Senjutsu until it was time to prepare dinner. When he thought about training, he remembered that he hadn't trained with Valina for quite some time. The desire to have a good fight filled Draco's body. He didn't have a good fight in a long time. The last fight Draco had had, if it could be considered a fight, was when he became involved in the Utsusimi issue. In the end, it was all over with Draco firing a few arrows, and he had received a great deal of experience in return. He could have gained more experience, but a mistaken decision-making had caused Tobio and Lavinia to take all the glory. In the end, Tobio had broken the seal of his balance breaker, which meant a boost in the strength of Draco's team. As such, everything had gone quite well for Akatsuki, although the organization had not been formed at that time. I know you suffered with Mordred this morning, but do you want to have a practice match? Draco asked Valina. Valina's eyes lit up when she heard Draco's proposal. It wasn't a lie that she felt unsatisfied after what happened this morning with Mordred, so she wanted to blow off some steam. By the usual rules? By the usual rules. The two looked at each other with a smile of understanding. In one of the training rooms in the basement, Draco was facing Valina. The two had exchanged the casual clothes they wore while in Kuo City for training clothes. The two looked at one another in the eyes, and they needed no sign to begin the fight. Without much thought, Draco lunged at Valina. A dark aura surrounded Draco's right arm, specifically from his elbow to his fist. The aura took the same form as his human arm, but it took the form of claws when it reached his fingers. This is what numbing darkness claws looked like when he used the skill in his human form. The speed at which Draco moved was one that a normal human eye could barely follow. Draco's best feature in his human form was none other than his speed, just the opposite of his dragon form. Whereas in his dragon form his speed statistic was the worst, In his human form, it was the highest, as it was the only one that did not see itself divided in half. By the time Draco reached Valina, however, she was gone. If there was one thing that characterized the descendant of Lucifer, it was her speed. Even when Draco had increased so many levels, he was still slower than Valina. But speed, while possibly one of the most important, if not the most important parameter, to Draco himself, had its own limitations. In the end, even though Valina outpaced Draco in speed, she didn't outgrow him that much, and there were ways to compensate. Draco felt the kick Valina was sending him from his left flank and dodged it with a minimal movement. This was the problem of a person who only trusted his or her speed. If she or he missed an attack in front of an experienced person, the person was left very exposed. Draco's analytical cold eyes did not let this opportunity pass. His left arm, surrounded by a golden aura similar to the dark aura of his right arm, was already more than ready to strike Valina's body. Before he could strike, however, Draco felt a sense of danger and quickly covered himself with both arms. He covered himself just as quickly as to prevent powerful demonic magic from striking his face. As a descendant of Lucifer, Valina's demonic power was immense and tremendously powerful. Even with Draco's incredible defenses, he was not going to come out unscathed after that attack if he received it head-on. Even with both numbing darkness claws and holy healing claws fighting back, Draco could feel his arms were a little numb. But Draco wasn't angry about that, and it only made the battle more and more exciting. He had been longing for a fight like that for a long time. Practice fights with Valina were the activity that Draco enjoyed most, and by far. Because of what had happened in the past few weeks involving Tobio and the rest, they could not train as much as they wanted. Both Draco and Valina loved these moments, and it was the main reason why the relationship between the two had come so close. In the first fight that they had months ago, they both fought with everything they had. Draco used his Gondiva, Tuki, and even his real form to fight Valina, while she used her sacred gear. After a tough battle, in which they destroyed the entire battlefield, Draco emerged victorious by a minimal margin, earning Valina's respect and admiration. No one her age or close to it had ever defeated Valina, and only the mighty of Grigori could defeat her. Even most of the eight-winged fallen angels could do nothing against her. After that fight, the two agreed to make a rule not to destroy the battlefield every time they fought. In the end, Draco couldn't use Gondiva in his true form, and Valina couldn't use her sacred gear. And the result of this was no less exciting than combat using their powers to the fullest. This was a different kind of tension, and it made both their fighting skills improve by leaps and bounds. For Draco, these training were essential for when he was in situations where he couldn't take his true form. He wanted to consider his true form as one of his trump cards along with his noble phantasm. He considered his human form as his main form, and his true form was an overboost to his statistics. In this way, his mentality was different, and he could push his weaker form to the limit, further improving his efficiency. This was then reflected in his true form and abilities. For Valina, these training were also essential. Her main goal was not to fight the most powerful beings in the world, but to finish off Rise of him. Fighting the most powerful beings was simply a secondary goal. To achieve her main goal, Valina knew she could not depend on the divine dividing because of the power her grandfather possessed. That's why these pieces of training with Draco, where she couldn't use her sacred gear, were invaluable combat experience for her. The fight between the two continued, and neither had mercy on the other. While Valina attacked Draco with quick moves and powerful attacks of demonic power, he defended himself with his own natural defenses and resistance skills. And when Draco managed to connect a blow to Valina, she defended herself by creating magical circles. Magic circles of protection were not the best, but they did an excellent job of minimizing the damage Valina received. Both Draco and Valina had difficulty connecting a true blow, so this had become a battle of attrition. The minutes passed, and there didn't seem to be a real winner. The two were very evenly matched. Even Draco thought he was going to run out of MPs before he could finish the fight. In the end, one attack hit hard. Draco received a powerful attack of demonic energy from Valina directly into his chest, which sent him flying a few feet. Draco's back hit the wall, and he fell to his knees. Valina did not miss this moment to approach Draco and placed her palm above his head. "You've already lost. Give up." Valina had a triumphant smile on her face. Yes, but she didn't know that beneath that headless head was Draco's evil smile. Even in this desperate situation, he hadn't given up. Valina had interpreted that yes as surrender on Draco's part. "You really are an innocent child." Before Valina could react, Draco had already pulled her arm and placed it under him. Unlike her, he had completely immobilized her. In this position, with both of them lying on the ground and Draco on top of Valina, he put his mouth to the girl's ear and whispered in her ear. "I've won." The warm air reached Valina's ear, causing her to tremble and blush. "Get off me. I can't breathe." Yes. Whatever you say, lady." Draco slightly mocked Valina's appearance as he stood up. Internally, Draco let out a relieved sigh. He was observing a certain statistic in particular. MP, 15 of 400. The constant use of skills to fight Valina had consumed a lot of MP. Maintaining 2 skills at the same time, each on one arm, consumed a huge number of MP. Not to mention that those 2 weren't the only skills Draco was using. On the other hand, using his human form also consumed MP, and due to the constant skill use, this was not recovered at an optimal rate. Restraining himself in his human form was way too much MP consuming to Draco, but that was another handicap that made the battle exciting. He let Valina out and sat down on the floor. Without expecting her to do anything, he sat down and started practicing Senjutsu. It wasn't that practicing Senjutsu made his MP recover faster. Still, the fact that Draco stopped any unnecessary movement made her recovery multiply. In fact, he had already cut off his senses. Valina stood up and looked at Draco gently. She already knew of his condition and agreed that it was important not to destroy the building where they lived. She also knew that when Draco was like this, he ignored everything around him. She knelt in front of Draco and kissed his forehead lightly. I think I love you, big brother." A few minutes later, when Draco felt he had recovered enough and Valina has long gone, he opened his eyes. That girl, isn't she too young to be talking about love? It was true that Draco sealed off his senses when he practiced Senjutsu, but he always left a trace of his consciousness in case something happened. He was able to sense a Zazel entering the first floor of the building from the terrace, so sensing Valina in front of him was not a problem. And when he felt the contact, he focused his senses a little bit just to hear Valina's last words. Letting out a sigh, he got up and left the room. His own smell was bothering him, so he decided to go into one of the bathrooms on this floor. There was still an hour left before the time when he had to start preparing dinner, so he could relax in hot water. The bath was of the Japanese type, the one that appears in many anime. It was divided into 2 parts, one in which one washed and the other in which he relaxed. Draco soon washed up and entered the relaxation area. It had barely been a few minutes since Draco had entered the relaxation area when he heard the splash of water. Someone else had entered the pool. Draco had his head resting on the back of his head with his eyes closed, so he could not see who it was. Still, he was 100% sure who it was. "We're finally alone, yeah." It looked like Draco was going to have another battle. That girl, she disliked puppet shows. No, she was disgusted by them. Standing behind the puppet maker was making a series of movements to manipulate it using the strings. Still, nothing resembling good feelings came from that. The reason had been clear. From as far back as the girl could remember, a cold apparition had appeared in her immediate vicinity. Anger, joy, sadness. Whenever the girl's mind and body were enwrapped with such human emotions that the cold apparition of ice would appear with absolute certainty. When it appears, it was always from beside the girl or from behind her. Even if the girl spoke to it, even if the girl shouted at it, the ice apparition, far from expressing any emotions, didn't offer up even a single word. On the contrary, it didn't so much as tremble. Quite simply, it was just there. For her, who was ranting and raving about the apparition, her childish mind found that dolls, which were similar to the spirit, to be thoroughly detestable. For that reason, she disliked puppet shows, because she'd end up feeling as though the ice apparition was manipulating her with invisible strings. Even if she spoke to her lovable parents about the apparition, thinking it was a joke of their daughter, merely a delusion of childhood, they didn't pay any serious attention to it. Most frighteningly, the ice apparition would be standing beside her parents' bed when they were sleeping at night. It watched her father and mother's faces with a silent gaze. Fearing that it would make her parents disappear, the girl completely despised the ice apparition. Then one year, when the girl was 9 years old, a tragedy occurred. She lost both her parents simultaneously. Having worked together at the same place, her parents were caught up in a mysterious accidental explosion at their workplace. She couldn't remember exactly what happened after that. Being informed of the death of her parents, completing the funeral service, being unable to find relatives who could care for her going forward. All the girl remembered was that, in her profound misery, she came to embrace complex emotions towards the ice apparition. By the time she noticed, she was in the home of an unfamiliar old woman who was wearing a plain smile. The old woman was a witch, a magician. On top of believing in the girl's ice apparition, she instructed her in regards to the spirit. "I will teach you magic." Displaying a gentle expression, the old woman taught the girl, who was accompanied by the apparition, a miraculous power. Magic. The old woman would address the girl whenever she would distance herself from the apparition. "Listen, Lavinia. You mustn't be afraid of your own power." The old woman who was teaching the girl, named Lavinia, her witch master, always spoke tenderly to her pupil who feared her own power. Magic is a miraculous power, can bring happiness to everyone. And concerning that puppet of ice, that place was darkness, without any light. It was a jet blackness without any impurity where not a sound could be heard. His eyes should be open, and yet it was dark. He should have been carefully listening, and yet not even the smallest sound could be heard. Even if he moved his finger, he couldn't feel anything. No, to begin with, whether he was even moving his finger, whether his finger was even moving, he couldn't sense even that. Noticing that he couldn't hear even his own heartbeat, he, Tobio accused, pondered whether he was hallucinating of his own death, but, together with a snapping sound like that of having received an electric shock, he was assaulted by sharp pain throughout his entire body, along with a feeling like his nerves were being scrapped. Shutting his eyes in pain, when he next opened them, light had spread before his eyes. A white arm reached out from in front of him. It seemed to him that the arm was of someone familiar, the arm of someone holding out a hand to him as though to pull him up. To seize it, Tobio stuck out his own right arm, but his right arm, it was jet black. The black arm did not appear at all to be that of a human, being covered with black body hair. Having the nails of the 5 fingers be completely sharp, it was like that of a beast's. Tobio touched his hand to his own face. For the first time, what he sensed, there was something utterly foreign when compared to his own face. A protruding mouth, ears that rose to a point, and even his whole face was covered with hair the same as his arm. The arm of somebody reaching out from the light was gradually getting further away. Tobio hurriedly reached out to seize the arm, but there was no indication of it reaching. As it was, he did not seize that person's hand. If there was something he could do to reach it. Thinking this much, what crossed his mind was a distorted protuberance. If he were to consider it, it would seem that something would grow out of his arm. With that, he should be able to reach that hand. That's no good. If I extend that protuberance, that blade, I'll cut that person's hand. For shortening the distance with that important receding person, only that disgusting blade. Suddenly that voice whispered close to his ear. Your blade, it reaches just about anything. However, your blade, it wounds everything. That voice, it finished speaking by ridiculing him. After all, you have already ceased being human. Early in the morning, Draco woke up at the same time as usual. Lifting his upper body, he took a deep breath. It was time to get up, and there was no time to waste. It had been 2 months since the incident involving the Utsasimi agency. Since then, Draco and the others had spent time training or recovering from their injuries. Today was the day all the members of Slashdog began their classes with Barrakiel. Unlike the others, Natsum had been the only one who had been training with Barrakiel and Aquino. Draco had work to do before the others woke up, so he had to get up now. Deciding this, Draco started to get up and remove the thin covers. Suddenly, his hand touched something. It was squishy. Draco wasn't an inexperienced kid. He knew exactly what he was playing with. These tits were pretty big, but the only girl who slept with Draco who had big tits was Kuroka. But Draco knew Kuroka's breasts perfectly, so he knew that this tit did not belong to the Nekashu. This tit was a little smaller than Kuroka's. Draco had a suspicion of who it might be, so he turned his gaze to the person in question. Yun? The girl in question groaned slightly as Draco tightened her grip slightly. The girl was sleeping on her right side. Her figure was covered by a simple white shirt. Draco's gaze was drawn to those dangerous bare legs. It was Natsum Managawa. After 2 months, Draco was already very familiar with Natsum. Still, it was strange to see her sleeping in his bed. Of all the students involved in the accident, Natsum was the closest to Draco. Since they spent their mornings at Grigori, they spent a lot of time together. Natsum slept next to Lavinia in the room that was right next to Draco's room, so she could have been in the wrong room at night. Although it would be expected for Lavinia to make a mistake, it seems that this time it was Natsum's turn. Draco shook his head and stretched out a bit. For the second time, he checked that it was Natsum who was sleeping next to him. Wait a minute, why are you taking it? Complaining in her sleep, Natsum tugged at the sheets Draco had lifted. Draco was surprised. Had Natsum entered his room without him noticing? And to think that somehow the girls could sneak into his bed without him noticing. Well, it was she who had snuck into his bed, so Draco was not going to ask permission to appreciate Natsum's beautiful figure. Since the hairstyle she always wears is fallen out, Natsum gives a sexy impression. Besides, she's a little disheveled. It looks like she's been turning around in her sleep. Draco got out of bed slowly, so as not to wake up all the girls who were still sleeping. Natsum was not the only girl sleeping in the bed, as there were also Kuroka, Akino, Mordred, Valina, and Chiron. "Nya, Draco, are you leaving already?" A pair of arms encircled Draco's neck from behind, and he felt the soft sensation of breasts resting on his back. Kuroka rested her head on Draco's shoulder and blew into her ear. "Yes, I have to get everything ready before I leave." Draco responded softly. "Yeah, it does not matter. Let's just get some more sleep." "No, but—" Draco realized at that moment that Kuroka was not fully awake. She had sensed him rising and had acted unconsciously. The problem was that Kuroka was pushing him toward Natsum. Draco hurried to the bed, where he would have crushed Natsum. "Hey, Kuroka, shut up and go to sleep, nya." Kuroka raised his voice at that moment. This was not a problem for the girls who used to sleep with Draco, as it was difficult for them to be awakened by something like this. Some girls were not used to this, however. Jeez. Don't raise your voice in the morning. Natsum opened his eyes slowly and found Draco's face. Her mind froze for a moment. Draco knew this was bad. Natsum's personality was something he knew well. While she was an energetic girl, she was very embarrassed when it came to this sort of situation. Draco only slept in a pair of shorts, so his chest was exposed. Natsum compared Draco's current state to the state she was in. Slowly, returned to the clothing she had slept in. Her face gradually blushed. Suddenly, she covered half of her face with the thin sheet. Glancing briefly at Draco, embarrassed, she hid her face in the sheet. What about that reaction? Draco was confused. If she had been the usual Natsum, she would have screamed in an angry voice and beaten him because of his shame. Draco expected her to make a fuss about this situation. But at her unexpected reaction, Draco was also perplexed. "So this is a sleep assault?" Natsum let out a slightly disappointed chuckle. "You're wrong, Natsu." "No, I don't blame you, Draco-kun. You're a dragon, after all. Barakil-sensei told me about your kind, so I understand the situation." Just as Draco had hoped, Natsum had misunderstood everything. It was just that her initial reaction had left him a bit surprised. "Although you should have just asked me, and I would have given you everything." Natsum muttered that, hoping that Draco would not hear it. She did not know that Draco's senses were completely different than those of a human. Or perhaps she did, but she did not remember. She spoke with a voice that a human should not be able to hear, but it reached Draco's ears without a hitch. So this little girl felt that way, Draco thought. Tears welled up in Natsum's eyes, and she seemed to be about to cry. Natsum. Draco tried to speak, but Kuroka had to step in at the right time. She seemed upset that Draco had not returned to bed, and she pushed him down hard. Kuroka's sudden push came as a surprise to Draco, and his stance collapsed slightly. He struggled not to fall on top of Natsum, but this movement caused the sheet to fall a bit, revealing Natsum's face. Draco's lips made contact with Natsum's. Sweet. It was an accident, but Draco always made the most of accidents. It was only for a moment, but he tasted Natsum's lips deeply. My first kiss. She was in shock since she didn't expect her first kiss to go like this. Don't misunderstand her, she wasn't sad about it. In fact, her heart was beating very fast, and she was getting excited. She was feeling a mixture of happiness and shame, as she didn't expect her crush to steal her first kiss. It was true that she had always dreamt of something more romantic, but these moments also had their romance. It was strange that she thought that way when at first she thought she was going to be assaulted. But this is a Japanese light novel girl we're talking about. Silly girl. Do you think I'd assault you while I'm surrounded by people? Draco whispered in Natsum's ear. Natsum's mind cleared when she heard Draco's words. She was in Draco's room, and multiple girls slept here. Even if they were in Natsum's room, so was Lavinia. There was no point in Draco assaulting her in this place. Then what are you doing on top of me? She asked anxiously. Draco looked away in reply, and Natsum followed his gaze. She found the sleeping Kuroka, who was still pushing Draco. So it had all been an accident, Natsum thought. She was relieved, on the one hand, that she was not going to be assaulted, and disappointed on the other, that Draco had approached her by accident. Kuroko is very strong, and I don't want to wake the others. Do you mind if I stay like this for a while? No. Since Natsum had given him permission, Draco relaxed a bit. The pressure Kuroko was putting on him was too much, so he moved a little closer to Natsum. Their faces were only a few inches apart, and each felt the other's breath. Their bodies were practically glued together, and Draco could feel Natsum's tits leaning against his chest. Draco could not help but admire the beauty of Natsum. She was probably not on par with Kuroka, but she was very close to the Nekashu. Natsum flushed, and her breath was getting heavy. Draco was beginning to feel Natsum's nipples bristle, and he noticed them directly on his chest. She seemed to notice this as well, as her blush was deepening. Draco! Hearing Natsum's seductive voice, Draco could no longer control himself. He lowered his head and stole Natsum's lips. To Draco's surprise, Natsum did not resist at all. Slowly, Draco thrust his tongue into Natsum's mouth. She had her teeth closed, so Draco opened them gently with his tongue. She was an inexperienced girl, so Draco had to guide her. Natsum was putting up no resistance, so Draco could force his way in with relative ease. Assuming the role of teacher, Draco linked his tongue to Natsum's. Draco played with it a bit, and withdrew the kiss when he saw that Natsum was running out of breath. Ha! Natsum breathed heavily as she fixed her intoxicated eyes on Draco's. She did not understand why she was feeling so hot at this point. Draco felt the force Kuroko was exerting disappear and took advantage of the moment to withdraw. But a pair of arms wrapped around his neck and prevented him from leaving. Draco could easily break free of Natsum's embrace, but he did not want to hurt her. One more kiss, but that's it. I have work to do, Natsum. The girl nodded weakly and put more strength into her arms to draw Draco in. She was a greedy child, there was no doubt about it. Draco would not be a man if he did not enjoy a woman who was throwing herself into his arms. Having learned from the last kiss, Natsum voluntarily stuck out her tongue to fuse it with Draco's. The two became involved in a situation where the two were kissing passionately, creating lewd sounds as they kissed. Draco grabbed one of Natsum's tits with one hand that he had tucked into the inside of the simple shirt she was wearing. He began massaging her breasts, feeling their softness to the fullest. Natsum tried to moan, but Draco silenced her mouth with his tongue. The kiss continued for a few more seconds until Draco felt it was enough. He finally separated his tongue from Natsum's and rose from the bed. She had run out of strength to keep Draco with her. You can still sleep a little longer. Now I'm going to wake you all up later. Draco stroked Natsum's face and kissed her on the forehead before leaving the room. Draco and Natsum didn't realize that two other girls were spying while they were kissing. One of them was Kuroka, who had pretended to be sleeping all this time. Kuroka had been enjoying sex with Draco for the past 2 months, and she had enjoyed it very much. The problem was that each time they had sex, Kuroka felt more and more overcome by Draco's sexual instincts. For Kuroka, there was no problem with becoming Draco's sex doll, but she didn't want to die because her partner in the bed was too good and had too much stamina. How many times had Kuroka lost consciousness because of the great pleasure Draco gave her? She had lost count, and it had barely been 2 months since they had begun having sex. She had been talking to the girl who had been spying on them, trying to get her to come closer to Draco romantically, but she had not been getting any results. She had done the same with Draco, but he had rejected her by saying that relationships had to be developed step by step. This had frustrated her greatly, but there was nothing she could do. Until today, Natsum was not the girl that has been spying them for 2 months, but Kuroka knew that she had developed a crush on Draco. Kuroka was not even responsible for Natsum being in Draco's bed at this point, as she had arrived here on her own. But Kuroka was not about to pass up this golden opportunity that had come her way. She had not been training Chiron for the past 2 months, but she also tested her new skills. What had caused Natsum to be so hot was Kuroka's pheromones. She had learned to control that skill better and had reduced it to only partially affecting Natsum. Such was Kuroka's control of this ability that Draco had not even noticed that she was slightly altering Natsum's mind. Kuroka's ability did not literally alter Natsum's mind. She was merely increasing a desire the girl already had. The result was Natsum kissing Draco passionately. Kuroka had not fulfilled her goal, but she had taken a step forward. The second girl was... It was 8 a.m. when Draco left the building. He wasted no time in summoning his motorcycle, as he had to make a trip to Kuo Town. This time he was going alone because he needed the free space. It was impossible to bring anyone with him because Draco was going to pick someone up. It took Draco a little over half an hour to get to Kuo Town. But, unlike when he came with Valina, Draco had a clear goal. He wasn't going to be wasting his time running around town. Draco parked on Golden Drive in front of a regular 2-story terrace house with a light blue exterior, a second-floor balcony, and a brown roof. It was an ordinary house because a normal family was living there. Well, not all the residents were normal people. The one who opened the door was a woman who seemed to be in her 40s. She had a friendly smile on her face when she invited Draco into her home. Draco, come inside. Draco went inside the house, following in the lady's footsteps. The house was not very large, so he soon reached the living room. There, a man similar in age to the lady was sitting next to a boy about 13 or 14 years old. "You're here now, boy." The man said hello to Draco. "Draco and I-san, I've been waiting for you." Obviously, this was the Hayadu residence. The woman was Miki Hayadu and the man Goro Hayadu. They were the parents of the young boy, Issei Hayadu. "Do you have everything ready, Issei?" Draco asked the boy. The reason Draco had returned to Kuo Town was that he was going to take Issei with him. In fact, this was Draco's 3rd trip to this town. On the 2nd time, he had come prepared and gathered information on Issei and his family. Goro Hayadu, Issei's father, is an ordinary office worker, while Miki Hayadu, Issei's mother, is a full-time housewife. They were a completely normal family, with a son who was finding his love and devotion for boobs. Draco had met them and offered Issei a place at a special school. He had told them about a special talent Issei had, and they had been quick to accept Draco's offer. At first, they were a bit resistant to the idea that Issei would be separated from them. Still, they accepted when Draco assured them that Issei would be back in 3 or 4 years. Probably, they thought that this special school was going to heal their son's abnormal perversion. All set, Issei pointed to the suitcase that was leaning against the wall. He had probably filled it with all his personal belongings since he was going to stop living in this house for a while. Draco had convinced Issei to join Akatsuki, thus gaining 1 more fate point. So far, he had collected a total of 10 fate points. Convincing Issei had not been too difficult, as Draco had only promised to help him secure his own harem, or at least gain enough power to have a harem. It was Issei's dream to be the harem king, so he needed considerable strength. In Draco's visit to the Hyudu family earlier, Draco had taught Issei a bit about the supernatural world, and he had taught him how to use his own sacred gear. Unlike Rainier, Issei had been able to get boosted gear out with ease. Actually, summoning a sacred gear was not difficult. A human who owns sacred gear only has to think of the most powerful thing his mind can imagine, and his sacred gear will manifest. The problem with Rainier was not that she couldn't use her sacred gear, but that she didn't want to. But that was a problem to deal with later. Now Draco had to focus on this kid. Okay, let's go then. Mr. and Mrs. Hyudu, I'll be in charge of your son from here. Draco didn't waste much time with Issei's parents, and he left the place with the boy. Draco went up to Golden Drive, and he waved Issei over behind him. Is this your bike? Issei asked curiously. It is, but it is a bit special. You can think of it as something similar to your boosted gear, although they're different things. Now stop talking and get on. They're waiting for us? Yes, sir. Issei climbed onto the back of the bike and wrapped his hands around Draco's waist. Draco had to admit that it was much better to take Valina and Kuroko on the Golden Drive than Issei. Natsum felt uncomfortable while eating breakfast. Draco had left everyone's breakfast ready before he left to pick up Issei, since he was not going to be able to join them. Natsum had woken up later with the rest of the girls. It had been Draco who had awakened them before he left, as he used to do with the lazy girls who slept with him every night. Natsum had woken up along with the others, until she realized the situation she was in. The first to realize that Natsum was in bed was none other than Valina, the girl Natsum had diagnosed with Chinibyo. She had said something along the lines of, "So Natsum Managawa has already realized how impressive this white dragon empress older brother is," and had laughed vainly. For some reason, Natsum felt that Valina had been sincere in her words, and had no intention of mocking her. After that, the other girls joined in teasing her. Natsum blushed at the thought. To distract her thoughts, Natsum fed the hawk that sat on her shoulder. She had given the falcon the name Griffin, and it was the manifestation of her sacred gear. All the girls were gathered around the table, eating the breakfast that Draco had spent his time making. Natsum had to be honest. The meals that Draco made sent her straight into a culinary orgasm. Not only was Draco a handsome, muscular, and charismatic man, but he was also the best cook Natsum had ever had. Even his kisses were incredible. Natsum's face grew even warmer as she thought of what had happened in the morning. Since when was she such an easy girl? There was no way Natsum would have let Draco take advantage of her with such ease. But what was done was done. There was no way Natsum could change what had already happened. But what would Draco think of her now? Draco already had a girlfriend, Kuroka, so Natsum could be considered the third wheel. In fact, Natsum was feeling very bad right now. As such, Natsum approached Kuroka after breakfast. "Kuroka-san, can we talk?" Kuroka looked a bit confused for a moment, but then she nodded. She turned to Chiron and said, "Go ahead, Chiron, yeah. I'll follow you later. Natsum and I have to discuss matters related to Draco and the future." Natsum tensed up when she heard Kuroka's words. Did she know about it? "Don't be too long." That's all Chiron said before she headed out onto the terrace. Mordred gave Kuroka and Natsum a deep look before following Chiron. Kuroka said nothing to Natsum and left the house. Natsum had no choice but to follow Kuroka outside. Once outside, Kuroka leaned against the wall as she watched over Natsum. "So, what is it you want to tell me?" Natsum was nervous. It was evident that Kuroka knew something had happened. Still, she was playing on the fact that she was unaware of the situation. "I'm so sorry." Natsum leaned in such a way that her back formed a 90-degree angle. "Why are you apologizing, yeah?" Kuroka looked really confused, which surprised Natsum. Kuroka knew that Natsum wanted to talk to her about Draco, so why was she surprised? "Yesterday, I got up to go to the bathroom late at night. The next thing I knew, I was in your bed. Then, Draco and I had an intimate moment. It was an accident, I swear. I don't know what was going through my mind at the time. Draco was in front of me, and I didn't know how to react, and I ended up doing it." "Doing what, yeah?" Natsum was very nervous at this point. A pity she did not see Kuroka's face, which was all smiles. It was undeniable that Kuroka was playing with Natsum, and she seemed to be enjoying the moment. KK kiss. The color red covered Natsum's entire face, reaching her ears. This was too embarrassing, too embarrassing. She had slept in the same bed with a boy, and they had kissed. Kissed. Draco had even played with her tits. I can't get married anymore. Or so Natsum thought. Do you love Draco? Natsum looked up, surprised at Kuroka's question. Kuroka's gaze was serious, on a level that Natsum had never seen in the Nekashu. Don't know. Natsum wasn't going to admit it. She was in front of Draco's girlfriend. She couldn't say she was in love with Draco to his face. This is not the time to hesitate, Natsum Managawa. I want to hear your answer right now, and it has to be yes or no. Either you answer white, or you answer black. I don't want gray answers. It was just as Kuroka had said. Either Natsum answered yes, or she answered no. There was no other answer. In other words, Kuroka was giving Natsum an ultimatum. There was no doubt that Natsum's future with Draco depended on the answer Natsum was going to give Kuroka. Natsum was hesitating. She wanted to give Kuroka a gray answer, not making her true feelings clear. She knew that Kuroka was forcing her to confess her feelings, however. If it was a choice between a yes or no answer, Natsum could not lie to herself. I think I'm in love with him. Natsum finally confessed her feelings. It was not the answer Kuroka was looking for. It was still an answer that was close to gray, but at least she had made a choice. Kuroka could start working from here. Do you know that Draco is not human? Well, it's pretty obvious considering that pair of horns on his forehead. At least he can hide them from humans who have no connection to the supernatural world. But he's still not human. He is a dragon. That's right. And being a dragon, his sex drive is immense. I'm not saying this is bad. In fact, it's very satisfying, believe me. You've only experienced his kisses and a little bit of his body massages. But that's nothing compared to the level of pleasure he can give you. I guarantee it. Kuroka had a satisfying smile as she spoke. Natsum, for her part, only wanted to run and hide in the most bottomless pit in the country. How could she be so bold as to speak of personal matters so easily? And why was Natsum feeling jealous? Natsum remembered the kiss he shared with Draco that morning, and the caresses he gave her body. Natsum was feeling her body warming up just thinking about it. For a moment, Natsum thought she wanted to feel what Kuroka had been feeling all along as well. But I can't catch up with Draco. With every day, his techniques in bed grow exponentially. Most times when we have sex, I momentarily lose consciousness due to pleasure. Was Kuroka telling the truth? Natsum found that hard to believe. Could someone be good enough in bed to knock someone out? That's why I need teammates. Like in the Ice stories where the hero puts together a team to defeat the Demon King. I need a team of women so I can defeat Draco in bed. Of course, I'm not willing to accept just any woman. I have my own conditions. Are you saying that? Exactly, you've been through those conditions successfully. Be proud, Natsum Managawa, because you're the first to go through all the conditions. Kuroka smiled proudly, as if what Natsum had accomplished was incredible. What exactly are those requirements? Natsum asked. The first one is the most essential, and it is the one you have just fulfilled. You must love Draco and recognize that love openly. If you had answered that you didn't love him, then I wouldn't let you have a relationship with him now or in the future. Kuroka's first requirement was both reasonable and unreasonable. If someone was going to have sex with Draco, that person had to love Draco. That was the reasonable part. The unreasonable part was not to let that person join the harem if she fell in love with Draco later. In the end, Kuroka was still the female ruler of the harem. She was the one who made the rules on this house. The second is that Draco has to agree with that relationship. Weren't these two requirements needed to establish a normal relationship? But Draco has never said he agrees. Natsum tried to protest. You're wrong. Draco would never have kissed you if he didn't find you attractive. I know him very well, and I know how he thinks. Now, I'm sure he thinks your relationship has taken a step forward, but you can't be considered an official partner. Therefore, I have an assignment for you, Natsum. Yes, I want you to get close to Draco and bring your relationship closer. In fact, I want you to be as intimate as possible. Kuroka's request left Natsum in shock. She just wanted to apologize to Kuroka. After that, she thought of forgetting about Draco, though it would be difficult after all he had done for her and the other students. Natsum would never have believed that Kuroka would willingly let her get close to Draco. Natsum was very delighted to have this opportunity. She had studied the ways of the supernatural world with Barakiel over the past 2 months, and knew that harem was not uncommon in this world. Since learning this, she thought she had a minimal chance with Draco, but she thought it was nothing more than an impossible wish. Though all of this was still a bit absurd to Natsum, she had to adapt to the circumstances. Her life during these 2 months had bordered on perfection. It was true that she missed her parents and friends, but she had formed a new family with all the girls and Draco. Even Tobio and Cookie could be considered good friends for Natsum. Sharing Draco with girls who made up this large family was something Natsum could agree with. The problem was, how should she approach Draco? Oh, here's Draco and yeah. Kuroka had officially ended the conversation when her verbal tick came back. Natsum was confused, as she did not see Draco anywhere. 5 seconds later, the sound of a motorbike rang out in the street, and a golden flash of lightning passed in front of Natsum's eyes, stopping just in front of her. Draco and I said, "This bike is amazing.